So guys, welcome to my channel. If you're ready to dive into the world of magic, mystery, and powerful what-if stories, you've found the perfect place. In today's video, we're asking the big question: what if Harry Potter married Bellatrix? A dark twist nobody expected. If you're curious about what happens next, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any magical adventures. Let's dive into the magic, and see how Harry's life changes forever. 1. The terms of custody. London's owls fly at noon, feathers sketched across the sky like falling signatures, while the ministry instructs every public clock to lose a minute in honor of a peace that nobody trusts yet. A bell that belongs to no church tolls once, then swallows its echo like a guilty throat. Somewhere between past and policy, a marriage that should have been a duel becomes a treaty with rings for seals and breath for witnesses. The headline refuses to sit still. The prophet wants triumph. The quibbler wants a riddle. Nocturne wants odds. What the city gets is a photograph that looks like a dare. Harry James Potter and Bellatrix Black in stormglass and ink, hands joined, eyes level, the air around them lit with the geometry of law. Harry keeps moving. It helps. Motion pares thoughts into lines instead of knots. The ring sits warm on his finger, black metal, patient, its inner edge engraved with a phrase that both refuses and accepts ownership, between you and the world. He can feel the pulse of the covenant like a second heartbeat, occasionally out of sync, then catching up, then waiting, as if testing whether he'll notice the lag. Bellatrix walks at his side with the mortal arrogance of someone who beat the odds by convincing the dice they liked her better. Her gown is ink rebottled into silk, less a color than a decision. When she smiles, the air's surface tension changes. People glance without meaning to. Some flinch. Some hold their breath to see if she will. The atrium has reinvented itself again. The statue is gone, again, replaced by a lattice fountain that refuses faces. Water threads through uncarved stone as if the future declines to be sculpted in advance. Oars in amber stand at demure ease, shoulders square, eyes half soft, but their wands think in straight lines. An unspeakable waits, veil glossed with muted glyphs that surface like fish and vanish like discretion. A healer in Saint Mungo's slate checks a case of charms with the efficiency of someone who despises surprises and therefore collects them preemptively. Kingsley Shacklebolt arrives with weather on his shoulders, storm carried politely outside so as not to wet the carpet. Head Potter. Tilt of the head, once meant yes to war, now translates to maybe to governance. Lady Black. The syllables are a bridge, crossable, guarded. Minister, Bellatrix purrs, pleased to taste the rank and find it real gold, not gilt. Her voice turns the air into velvet laid over a knife. Hermione flanks Harry like a principle that refuses to unlearn itself. Ink smudges the side of her hand, sleep creased into the corner of one eye, hair pinned with a quill that has opinions. We have language, she says, no flourish, plain, defensible, testable. A parchment slides onto the table with margins that breathe. Terms, Kingsley says, flat as a cutting board. 1. Weekly review at the ministry. 2. No unilateral hostile operations by either signatory without notifying the watch circle. 3. Anomalous rebound events reported within 1 hour to Auror Dispatch. 4. Children clause acknowledged, no ritual action affecting potential or actual issue without witness. 5. Healer oversight seated for lash injuries and covenant strain. 6. No compulsion in the Mindroom. Bellatrix's smile grows by a degree that would get a saner person arrested. Compulsion is a tedious hobby, she says, innocent as a cat with cream on its mouth. Consent is far more interesting. Harry feels the ring thrum twice, then settle, like a door clicking in the place inside their heads where chairs face a table with a knife neither can lift alone. He pictures the knife, doesn't touch it, lets the silence between them seat itself deliberately. The unspeakable's voices rain through metal. Covenant 4 manifests as intersecting sigils resembling a crown. Compliance will be measured by peripheral divination only. No extraction of intent without dual consent. No ingress into private thought by ministry or third parties. Runes glow, then fold back into the veil like secrets returning to their rooms. Ron Weasley has the look of a man who woke in a different decade and put on the right tie anyway. So, if some Burke throws a hex, Oath bites him back, ×3, yeah. Correct, the Auror in amber says, clipboard tone, proportional to harm, Mitigated if motive is duress, worsened if conspiracy. Conspiracy, Hermione echoes, eyes narrowing as if grammar just tried to get away with murder. We define it, now. She taps a clause, ink fresh, 7 lots clarified, intent, consequence, equity, consent, lineage, debt, restitution. Accepted, provisional, the veil murmurs, soft thunder. Bellatrix tilts her head so the obsidian comb in her hair catches the light like a trap becoming pretty by accident. You have a number for my betrayal index, she says, hungry. Say it. Private, the aura replies, nearly apologetic. Then guess, Bellatrix whispers, delighted. Harry places both hands on the table, flat, calm, inviting gravity to do its job. We accept the terms with the compulsion prohibition explicit. We reserve contest on any clause that attempts to weaponize the children provision as leverage. Kingsley signs with a wand tap that looks like rain deciding to become law. The signature glows, then locks, then dims. Proceed, he says, voice holding 3 things: warning, permission, and a small, reluctant hope. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The atrium's mouth blooms reporters like a hive relearning the concept of flowers. Quills snap to attention, cameras churr, eyeglasses widen their eyes on command. Rita Skeeter arrives in a suit that weapon Ezesh green, smile set to litigate reality. Harry, darling. Bellatrix, ravishing. A word for the wizarding world. Bellatrix leans forward into the throat of the sentence with the reflex of a predator finding the artery. Here is your word, she says, almost kind. Truce. Beat. Sharp. Exact. Spell it correctly, this time. Rita recalibrates without blinking. And the children clause, plans, hopes, names. Plans are private, Harry says, deadpan that leaves room for fire. Hopes are for everyone. Names are earned. The crowd tastes the line. Some find it sweet, some bitter, none leave hungry. Bellatrix's smile curves like a parenthesis with teeth. We'll let you know if we decide to let the world borrow a future, she adds, smoke light. Hermione's hand bumps Harry's elbow like a metronome reminding a pianist there's a bar coming up that tends to be rushed. He nods, fraction, breathes. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Diagon Alley at. Early evening is a theater pretending not to be one. Shopfronts square their shoulders. Wand boxes hold their breath. Children try on courage the way they try on hats. Some fits are too big, some perfect. The smell is sugar and soap and something like static, magic deciding what mood it's in. The first illegal curse of the truce is cast by a boy old enough to require an alibi and young enough to think a coin that talks is interesting rather than terrifying. Hex of softened bones, silent, taught incorrectly on purpose so it seems safer than it is. It leaves a wand held in fingers that have never broken a knuckle and aims at a busker playing a tune that remembers the war in a key that forgives nothing. The Covenant hears it. The air hardens, then snaps, then sings. Rebound. Thrice, bones of the attacker's casting arm melt to jelly, pain muted by the oath's insistence that public lessons be survivable. The wand drools to the cobbles, spittle of light, then dies. Harry is already moving, eyes counting angles over awnings and rooflines. Left. Apothecary. Awning, he says, voice like a hook tossed to a partner who always chooses to catch it or bite it. Walking is such a mortal vice, Bellatrix murmurs, vanishing, reappearing with a pop that sounds like ink deciding to be a blot after all. She doesn't touch the boy. She touches the space near his fear. It obeys her. A copper coin lies half-shadowed near the gutter, stamped with no mint, breathing cold where the evening is warm. The boy wheezes, eyes too large. They said, the lash would prove he's not real. Harry kneels, weight on heels, palms open, voice iron wrapped in felt. Who said? The coin, the boy manages, it talks. Bellatrix's laugh slides along the lettered bones of the air. A coin that whispers contracts, how charmingly literal of our enemies. She flicks her eyes at the disc, not touching, letting the mindroom door rattle once in warning, then still. Healer's slate arrives, the oversight seat panting, charms already in the mouth of her wand like first responders with their hands on the right drawer. Stabilized. Heal live. The lash marked soft, first defense, coached hand. The aura in amber appears as if the alley built him for this moment. Statement timers running. coin logged as evidence, don't touch. Witness grid set. Grid. Bellatrix purrs, enjoying the bureaucracy because it looks like a net and she once loved watching things try to fly through nets. 10-yard perimeter, trace retention, the orer says, tone flat enough to iron a shirt on. Harry stands, giving the street back to itself, eyes on the coin's edge where light thins. We bag it, he says, but not here. Mirror room at the ministry. Hermione's spec protocols. Hermione nods, words already preloading into the day's final parchment. Yes, mirror room, no direct contact, use the nested jars. If it's a contract parasite, it'll try to write on the first thing it touches. Bellatrix glances at Harry and lets the mindroom crack open to a sliver. He feels the cool of her attention and the heat of her restraint collide, stabilize, become interest leashed by consent. We could invite it in, she says, sub-voice, softer than her heartbeat. Later, he thinks, firm, placing that word on the small table beside the knife. We do this clean, she sighs like a curtain deciding whether to be closed. Spoilsport. It sounds like affection cosplaying as insult. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The lift is brass and old arguments held together with screws. It rises like a polite threat. The coin sits nested in triple. Jars, glass, silver, quartz, etched with counter-writs that make the air cough. The unspeakable's veil hums, glyphs blooming and dying faster than a liar's promises. Artifact presents as dormant, but the dormancy is performative. See the temperature drop around the rim. It's asking to be touched. Don't, Hermione and Harry say together, then exchange a look that accidentally admits they like being a team even when the world is ridiculous about it. Bellatrix watches their reflection in the lift's wall, three figures rippling, one of them a mirror that refuses to stay flat. If it's performative, let's give it an audience. Doors open to the mirror room, white stone, black glass, no edges where a mind can catch its sleeve. The table is a silver rectangle that thinks it's a lake. The jars go down with the cautious gravity of someone setting a sleeping law on a bed it doesn't deserve. Proceed, Kingsley says from the doorway, framed by two oars and a decision that doesn't want to be made yet. The unspeakable draws a circle with a chalk that refuses to admit to being chalk. Circle 1, observational only. Circle 2, intervention ready. Circle 3, containment. Any words spoken inside the second ring will be recorded by the glass. Any intent aimed at the object will be weighed by the room. Bellatrix steps to the first ring like a dancer testing a floor that might be a mouth. Shall we speak coin, she says, amused, or do we insist it struggle with English like an immigrant from a worse idea? Neutral, Hermione replies, stern, no naming until we know which names it steals. Harry nods, breath slow, ring warm, mindroom door ajar. We're listening, he says, plain, addressing the cold in the jars the way one addresses a storm one refuses to flatter. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then mist threads the jars, condenses on the quartz, sketches a pattern that wants to be a face but thinks better of it. A voice arrives that sounds like a contract read by a widow. Accelerate. Issue. Pending cannot remain so. Choose law, or lash. Either way, we collect. Ron swears under his breath in a dialect that smells like a good pub and a bad idea. Collector, he mutters, bloody debt mongers. The veil brightens, glyphs hammering each other into sense. Signal triangulation indicates a broker syndicate operating from rooflines, dragonbone optics. Ledger of living ink, entries adjust to micro-probabilities. They are trading futures based on outcomes of the oath. Kingsley's jaw tightens an eighth of an inch, enough to move policy. We cannot allow a market in the truce, he says, soft, deadly. Bellatrix leans closer until the glass decides it has pores. Little coin, she whispers, voice turned to wire wrapped in velvet, what happens if we refuse to play? Then law plays you, the coin breathes, cold climbing the jars, and lash chooses your children for you. Hermione's hand trembles once, purposefully, moving a rune counter 2 degrees clockwise. It's leveraging the child clause. Threatening determinism. We narrow the interpretive field. Harry places his palm flat against the table just outside the first ring, heat translating into pressure translating into promise. Listen carefully, he says, eyes on the condensation that wants to be a prophecy and keeps failing on purpose. There is no child. There is an option space. We are not selecting infants like sweets. We are designing a city where infants don't inherit curses disguised as laws. The coin's chill falters. Design implies cost. Everything does, Bellatrix purrs, smile edged, ask my wrist. She turns it subtly, showing where the oath's thread sits under skin like a line of black light. The room inhales. The jars click microscopically as the quartz decides it's tired of being humble. Cracks spider the inner surface, delicate, exquisite, controlled by runes that choose where not to go. Containment holding, the veil says, calm pinned down by training. The coin speaks again, voice thinning into a blade. If you delay, vote moves. Ministry invalidates by technicality. Truce suspended pending review. Market spikes. Kingsley's face becomes Parliament having a toothache. Who told you about the vote? He murmurs, promise of arrests in his tone. Your minutes are delicious, the coin answers, gloating, our roots are porous. Bellatrix laughs once, sharp, beautiful, cruel only to boredom. They think they can starve us of time, she says, eyeing Harry as if he is an orchard that needs pruning by a madwoman who learned tenderness late and therefore does it with terrifying precision. Husband, shall we steal some back? Always, he says, without heat, without ceremony, just the kind of yes that holds a line even when rain erases chalk. Hermione slides a parchment into the circle, edges warded, ink ready like cavalry forgotten behind a hill on purpose. Counter offer, she says, voice scaffolded by righteous pedantry, a declaration of interpretive sovereignty over the children clause, signed by both signatories and witnessed, now. Harry picks up the quill. It hums like a held note. Bellatrix takes it from his hand halfway through the first stroke with a rudeness that is trust in disguise. They sign in sequence that becomes harmony by accident. The room responds. The Covenant's crowned sigils appear in the glass, intersections brightening like constellations remembering how to be maps. A new line threads the pattern, consent is prime, looping the child clause until it cannot be pulled tight by anyone but the two of them, together. The coin stills. Condensation retreats. The cracks in the quartz decide to be decorative rather than terminal. Noted, it whispers, thinner, meaner, afraid for the first time because it thought law was a river and just discovered a dam with a grin. Harry exhales, slow, counting 4, holding 5, then letting 6 fall away because perfection is a myth and the point is practice. Bellatrix does not exhale. She devours the silence in a sleek mouthful and leaves the room hungry for more of itself. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They spill back into the corridor where the ministry keeps its indifference polished. Reporters sent heat and circle. Rita's quill opens its jaw. So, interpretive sovereignty, Harry, are you inventing a new constitutional magic? Bellatrix, will house black file an amicus brief. How would you define fidelity, legally, romantically, publicly? Fully, Bellatrix says, enjoying the panic that word causes in people who assume fullness is a synonym for scandal. We define fidelity as dual loyalty, law and spouse, both fed, neither starved. The order matters, sometimes, so we'll take turns going first. Harry doesn't smile, exactly. The corner of his mouth remembers what it's like. Today, law first, he says, tomorrow. Tomorrow we teach law to purr, Bellatrix finishes, eyes like knives fed milk. Hermione pinches the bridge of her nose in a gesture that has saved nations and friendships from saying the next sentence. We're done, she says, firm, parental, merciful, for today. They exit into late light that goes down the throat of the city like whiskey. Harry feels the Covenant shift, a pressure, like a room upstairs where a window is opening without permission. He stops, tilts his head, listens. Do you hear it? He asks, already suspecting she does. Bellatrix's pupils widen until the ring around them is a decision rather than an eye. Of course, she murmurs, pleased, our broker on the roof. They look up together, two wolves scenting a ledger. On the cornice opposite, a silhouette lowers a spyglass of dragonbone and ink. The figure's other hand flips a book that breathes, pages writhing into entries that try to outrun being read. Their posture is a bet dressed as a person. Shall we? Bellatrix asks, voice a shawl over a blade. Not yet, Harry says, counting lines of fire, civilians, escape routes, the way the dusk turns windows into excuses. We don't spook the herd. She hums, Mindroom door easing wider, edge of her laughter spilling in like quicksilver that learned not to stain. You and your herds. Fine. We set the hook. He nods, already letting the bait be obvious enough to insult. Kingsley, he calls, quiet, into the air, knowing the Auror net hears. Announce a closed session on Covenant resilience. Leak the wrong room, we'll be in the right one. Risky, Hermione says, admiration disguised as complaint. Bellatrix's hand finds the crook of Harry's elbow for the first time since the Oath Room. The contact is a dare written in cursive on the inside of a wrist. He accepts with the grace of a man who knows winning is surviving with a soul that still recognizes itself in a mirror. They walk. The city leans to make room. The ring warms, then cools, then warms. The Mindroom waits with patient furniture. On the table, the knife neither can lift without the other gleams like a question that loves being answered slowly. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mini Cliff. On the rooftop, the broker smiles without teeth and tilts the dragonbone glass until it catches both of their reflections at once. Potter in Stormglass, black in ink. The ledger inks a new line that refuses to hold still. Issue, pending, splits into 3, candor, constraint, and a third that won't choose a name, yet. A coin in the broker's palm whispers the weather of votes, gusts toward invalidation, then stalls as if someone taught the wind a counter-argument. Accelerate, the broker murmurs, voice young with an old accent, they've found consent's hinge. The coin cools, hard, eager. Then we sell time, it hisses, and by their next minute. Ellipsis. ... 2. The knife on the table. Night gathers like a contract folded into a pocket, warm at first, then remembered as a crease that never smooths. Windows along the alley blink out one by one until the street's reflection belongs to whoever is stubborn enough to keep walking. Above, a broker breathes ink into dragonbone and pretends to be weather. In the rooms where government sleeps with a quill under its pillow, minutes try to decide whether they are history or bait. Somewhere, a vote sharpens itself on technicalities and calls that sharpening virtue. Somewhere else, a coin dreams of mouths saying yes faster than they mean it. Harry turns a key that is not a key. The Potter townhouse receives him with the caution of an old house learning a new surname. Wood remembers footsteps. Stairs negotiate. Doors practice discretion. Tonight, every hinge holds its breath. Bellatrix crosses the threshold with the insolent grace of a storm accepting hospitality. Her ring ticks against his when their hands brush, accidental in the way lightning occasionally apologizes to a tree. Ink-dark fabric skims. Old air, drawing out the ghosts of polish and smoke. Charming, she says, voice amused, a place that has learned obedience without losing personality. Like its owner, Hermione says from the parlor, already present, already annotating the world. Quills stand in a low glass like flowers that consented to be useful. Ron sprawls in a chair with the patience of a guard dog pretending not to listen for stones in the dark. Ground rules, Harry says, door shutting behind them like a period. We talk in the room. We test in the room. We don't use it to win arguments we could win by being decent. Bellatrix's smile arrives slow, cathedral light finding a knife. Decency is such a delicate implement. But, yes, we don't cheat with the room. Hermione's eyes map both of them onto a plan that keeps changing by surviving. I've woven safe words into the perimeter wards. Say, break, and the Mindroom, S. Say, blind, and the mirror's frost. Say, mercy, and I interfere without permission. Bellatrix tilts her head, runes in her comb blinking like rude stars. Interfere, how? By ending the scene, Hermione says, flat, gentle in the way surgeons are gentle, and cleaning the blood. Ron's mouth twitches. Good old you, he mutters, half prayer, half praise. Harry nods. The ring warms, then steadies, like a horse feeling the reins loosen and choosing not to bolt. We're going in, he says, eyes on Bellatrix, consent. Her gaze glitters with 1,000 terrible ideas that have learned to sit politely at table. Consent, she says, clear, hungry, kind. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The Mindroom appears without appearing. One moment they inhabit wood, glass, oil, and gravity, then a click, like a thought finding its coat, and they stand where there was always a door if one was stubborn enough to insist. The room is small by law and large by mercy. 2 chairs face each other at a table of dark wood that understands altars. On the table lies a knife neither of them can lift without the other's hand closing around it too. Walls are suggestion rather than architecture. Past a certain angle there is only clarity or fog, depending on what is deserved. Harry sits. The chair fits as if measured in scrapes and reconciliations. Opposite, Bellatrix coils into hers with the poise of a sentence that knows its verb will not be interrupted. Between them, the knife gleams, its edge the precise length of an admission. Names, Harry says, soft, for the room. She purrs, tasting the request, rooms love names. And names love to be owed. We'll call it, A, she allows to ripen, between. Between, he echoes, letting the word decide where to sit in the air. The room accepts the christening like a river accepting a bridge. Shall we test taboos? Bellatrix asks, eyes bright, the boundary conditions. No killing for sport. No compulsion for convenience. No lies that formalize into law. Harry places his fingers near the knife, close enough to count reflections, far enough to refuse temptation. Add, no use of children as leverage. No rituals that cost another person without their consent. No vows we can't break if breaking them saves a life. Her smile thins, less feral, more human. Breaking vows. Dangerous music. But I like the rhythm. The knife brightens, edge catching a light that belongs to neither of them in both. The room records the conditions by folding the air around each sentence the way paper crimps to hold a memory. Nothing writes. Everything remembers. Lineage. Bellatrix says, voice cooling, House Black claims me, claims you now by accident and a right. It respects ferocity and despises cowardice disguised as tradition. If we kneel to it, it will leash us. If we stand with it, it will guard our backs in the fight it understands best, against stagnation. Harry listens, letting the edges of her words cut his assumptions carefully instead of wildly. We don't kneel, he says, quiet, we converse. We honor the dead by not letting them run the living. Her eyes flicker, fox astonished at a rabbit turning and baring teeth that have read books. Perhaps, she murmurs, the house will enjoy you. He tips his chin at the knife. Your turn, put something on the table you don't like saying. Bellatrix considers, lids low, breath even. Very well. I killed for pleasure. The room cools, respectfully, not punitively, because honesty is warm and horror is cold and the two must be allowed to sit together without theater. Not often. Enough to know the taste is not myth. Harry's mouth opens, closes, chooses a road with fewer flags. And now, I can enjoy cruelty only when it is lazy, she says, flat, which is to say, almost never. Precision has more flavor. The knife dims, approval disguised as neutrality. The room's corners soften, like a jaw unclenching. Harry rests his palm near the handle. My turn. I wanted you dead for years. Sometimes, still, when I'm tired, when the world is stupid, when serious is a fresh bruise again. He breathes. The wanting passes when I look at the world we are building despite us. Bellatrix watches him with an expression that refuses to insult the moment by pretending not to be moved. Good, she says, low, wanting keeps hands honest if they are not cowards. Silence drapes the table. It is not empty. It is furnished with restraint. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They test the knife. Bellatrix curls her fingers around the handle, Harry mirrors, metal warms, then grants weight. The blade lifts, only together, edge singing a note too high for fear and too low for triumph. They hold it, watch it, lower it, release. The table hums, satisfied like a teacher when a student stops guessing and starts understanding. Consent, Harry says, is prime. Consent, Bellatrix agrees, is delicious. The room approves. Somewhere, a ledger groans. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They leave between to find the house digesting visitors. Narcissa arrives wrapped in winter the way ivy wraps a ruin, making it elegant without pretending it isn't broken. Lucius follows like a knife in a scabbard that believes in theater. Kingsley's shadow precedes him, oars posted at angles that suggest architecture more than threat. Hermione and Ron form a line of defense made of sense, loyalty, and sarcasm. Family, Narcissa says to Bellatrix, kiss a breath from a cheek, do not make a fool of your luck. Luck likes me, Bellatrix replies, fond, dangerous. Lucius inclines. Lord Potter Black, he purrs, testing the fit of the hyphen as if it might conceal a dagger. House Black extends a correction to the public narrative. He produces a slim black case that might hold a wand, a letter, or a sentence. Within, an elegant truce gift, an invitation to sovereignty. Meaning, Hermione says, without blinking, a right. Of restoration, Narcissa answers, of Bellatrix's name, of Black's temperance, of your union's viability. Bellatrix's laugh could etch glass. Temperance. How adorable. Kingsley's voice remains parliamentary even when it goes to war. What does the right take? Lucius smiles as if he invented cost-benefit analysis. It weighs. It marks. It prefers courage. It despises fraud. Harry takes the case. Inside, parchment black as midnight, ink a paler black, letters rising when looked at, settling when ignored. Words sketch a circle scrawled by an ancestor who realized too late that law and magic are synonyms with different shoes. We do it, he says, before the room decides for them. Bellatrix's eyes flare, pleasure that tastes like patience learned in captivity. We do. Witnessed, Hermione adds, already writing, with controls. Always, Kingsley says, grim, and healer oversight. Narcissa's mouth almost softens. Sister, she murmurs, where's something untrue, let the right discover the lie and forgive it. Bellatrix's answering grin is a cathedral turned into a sin. I will wear hope. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The right requires a room older than fashion and younger than ruin. House Black provides one in a townhouse that remembers unheated winters and overheated arguments. The ancestral chamber sits below the ground the way a heart sits below a sternum, protected by bone and habit. Walls are stone, polished by a century of backs finding them when knees wanted to know the floor. Candles seat themselves on ledges in pairs like eyes that have agreed to witness without intervening. The circle on the floor is inscribed in a language that remembers Latin the way a grandparent remembers their first love, is flavor, not fact. The watch circle arranges itself, Auror amber at the door, unspeakable violet at a pillar, healer slate near a table with neat tools that hope to be bored. Hermione stands with a parchment thick as a treaty. Kingsley is a silhouette that has opinions. Narcissa is winter. Lucius is a brand new razor. Harry and Bellatrix step into the circle together. The ring warms, between glances at them from the corner of the eye and approves. The circle hums, a chord that tastes like iron and memory. A figure manifests, not a ghost, not a person, an adjudicating concept wearing a body for convenience. Its face is a mask cut from a family tree, lines for lines, names for bones. House Black calls Bellatrix to sovereignty, it intones, voice like a will being read to relatives who wish they'd been kinder. House Potter presents a counterweight, mercy sharpened. Balance will be measured in 7 lots. Begin intent. Bellatrix speaks first because she can. Intent, she purrs, I intend to remain myself and break anything that attempts to make me a reflection. Consequence, Harry answers, I accept that remaining ourselves hurts and helping others hurts too. Choose the hurt that leaves the world larger. Equity, Bellatrix says, we pay what we owe, unless the debt was written by a liar. Consent, Harry says, prime. Lineage, Bellatrix says, we inherit blades, not chains. Debt, Harry says, we collect only what does not corrupt us. Restitution, Bellatrix says, voice almost tender, when we break, because we fix with gold melted from pride. The mask inclines, not approval, acknowledgement. Lines rise from the circle, threads of dim light, each winding around a wrist, waist, throat, never choking, always measuring. Questions appear not as words but as rooms that must be walked through. First lot, intent, becomes a corridor lined with mirrors that refuse to show faces, only actions. Bellatrix walks. The mirrors show her laughter shaped around pain like a jeweler setting a stone, then show her hands cutting ties she should have cut long ago, then show her not touching the knife when touch would be victory and defeat in one breath. She reaches the end without running. The thread at her wrist loosens by a hair. Harry walks. The mirrors show him killing with clean hands by choosing inaction, then saving with dirty hands by making a mess, then standing between a crowd and a cruelty with a smile that is all teeth. He reaches the end, thread loosens, breath tasted like salt. Second lot, consequence, becomes a stairwell whose steps demand a story per footfall. They speak. They count the costs they never paid because others loved them. They count the costs they paid and pretended were bargains. The stare listens, stops asking when the truth begins to hurt correctly. Third, equity becomes a scale piled with apologies on one side and laws on the other. They remove laws that were apologies in disguise. They add apologies that deserve to become laws. The scale finds a level that would make no one happy and everyone safer. Fourth, consent asks nothing, only waits. They wait with it. Waiting counts as the answer. Fifth, lineage summons faces from the walls that are not ghosts, only claims. Sirius appears, not his face, his absence, cold wind from a door that won't close because someone needs it open when they finally come home. Bellatrix flinches, does not flee. I won't apologize for the dead with the living's mouth, she says, raw, but I will build a world where fewer doors eat fewer boys. Harry's throat closes, opens, words without heroics. He deserved better. So does everyone after him. Sixth, debt unrolls scrolls that smell like old thunder. Names demand, names whine, names plead. They burn the false ones. They sign the true ones. Smoke writes approval in cursive across the ceiling. Seventh, restitution offers a bowl, a hammer, and pieces of something that looks valuable because it used to be whole. They melt pride. They pour gold into cracks. The bowl holds. The room warms. The mask speaks, final, ritual satisfied. Sovereignty recognized. Bellatrix Black stands, not kneels. Harry Potter carries Black Star, not as chain, as compass. Light coalesces at Harry's sternum, sharp, brief, black, a star branded where no eye can see but every oath can read. It burns like an introduction one does not forget. He sags, only a little, ring hot, between opening a window to let the heat out. Bellatrix's hand finds his, clasp, not tender, true. Breathe, she says, command and kindness braided. He does. Narcissa exhales a winter that becomes spring by inches. Sister, she says, soft enough to cut all the throats that deserve it, do not squander this. Lucius claps once, gloved, beautiful, useless. Kingsley nods, tiny, policy changing 3 degrees in some office far away where ink decides who eats. Hermione writes, ink like a river with a plan. Ron whistles, low, surprised into respect. The unspeakable's veil ripples, glyphs surfacing like fish that want to be caught. Residual anomaly. A rune coil remains. Pattern mirrors covenant crown, non-ministry. The coil lies where the circle's edge kissed shadow. It pulses like a heartbeat smuggled into metal. Bellatrix crouches, does not touch, eyes narrow. Gift from our rooftop accountant. Or a leash, Hermione says, grim. Leashes make useful rope when weighed correctly, Bellatrix murmurs, smile small, sharp. Harry straightens, brand cooling, resolve setting around it like muscle. We trace it, no contact, mirror room, same protocol as the coin. Kingsley gestures, aura moves, tools hum, containment engages with the relief of a system being used properly. The coil enters a warded case with a sigh like a liar learning it won't be believed today. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Between opens at Harry's shoulder without being asked. They step in because not asking is how wars start. The knife sits on the table like a thesis. They take their chairs, hands near the blade. Terms, Harry says, eyes steady, we will court law, never worship it. We will court each other, never consume. Bellatrix's laugh is a bell that lost its innocence and gained pitch. We will teach law manners. We will teach each other restraint that does not smell like fear. The knife brightens, room warms, between approving like a judge who wishes them well and knows wishing is not a plan. Red lines, Harry continues, no appeals to the crowd when the room will do. No tactical cruelty when strategic mercy is available. No secrets kept out of habit. Add, she says, quick, no forgiveness demanded like tax. No apologies given like performance. No surrender that makes us forget who we are. Agreed, he says, without adornment. Silence sits. It is fed. It purrs. The ring pulses twice. Message, Mindroom window tilting open. Outside, the broker shifts weight on a cornice and prepares to sell minutes to a market that insists on turning futures into stake. A coin in a pocket whispers about votes. The city rolls its shoulders like a boxer considering religion. Bellatrix glances toward the window that isn't there. He's impatient. Good. Impatience makes people polite to traps. Harry stands. The chair accepts his leaving without complaint. We spring one, he says, on our terms. On our terms, she echoes, rising, knife untouched, room fed. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They choose the wrong room publicly and the right one privately. Kingsley issues a statement about covenant resilience in hearing chamber C, doors wide, benches shining, reporters penned. Harry and Bellatrix enter, sit, perform patience. Hermione, Ron, and the watch circle play their parts, a ballet of distraction and bureaucratic decency. Rita writes the wrong story beautifully. Above, the broker relaxes into his ledger. The coin purrs. The market bets on Chamber C. Across the ministry, an older storeroom that once housed records no one dared destroy exhales dust and invitation. Mirrors line two walls, acquired from cases that never closed. Runes sleep in the corners like snakes that want to be fair. Harry, Bellatrix, the veil, and a single oar slip inside. The coil sits in its case on a silver table that thinks it's a lake. Bait, Bellatrix says, pleased. Mirror net live, the veil murmurs, trace lines to roof, coin carrier within range. Harry places his palm flat on the table outside the circles, not inside, respect that reads as threat to things that confuse kindness with weakness. We're listening, he says, again, like an incantation that refuses flourish. The coil wakes with the theatrical restraint of a predator trained in etiquette. Lines unspool, thin, pretty, aimed at reflection rather than flesh. In the mirror, for a heartbeat, a face appears, young, sharp, old eyes, no teeth in the smile. Keystone, the reflection whispers, choose. Accelerate. Bellatrix steps into the second ring and lets her reflection move half a breath out of sync. It's a trick. It's a threat. It's a poem. No, she says, sweet, fatal, you choose. Name yourself. The coil, S. Hungry, surprised, flattered. Collector, it says, then almost, C. The room bites down, runes flaring, name truncated into a hiss. The veil, grunts, pleased, bound, partial. Harry's reflection does not smile. It simply refuses to look away. Here are our terms, he says, voice even, we will not be hurried by fear. We will not be stalled by tradition. We will not be priced. Everything has a price, the reflection croons, coin cold, market warm. Not everything is for sale, Bellatrix answers, lazy is a loaded spring. We invented a new currency, consent. The coil tightens, lashes, tries to hook something soft. The mirror flares, between answers with a knock only they hear. The blow glances. The oar doesn't breathe until it's over. Vote, the reflection spits, losing accent, losing poise, invalidate, tonight. Let them try, Harry says, calm that tastes like storms making tea. We will win in public or in the cracks. Either way, we collect. Bellatrix laughs, low, dark, joy like a blade learning manners. The reflection flinches. The coil dims. The mirror remembers how to be a lake. Trace locked, the veil says, satisfaction hidden like a knife in a book. Rooftop, we have you. Go, Harry tells the oarer, already moving. Quiet, fast, kind if possible, cruel if necessary. Bellatrix catches his sleeve, brief, permission disguised as provocation. Husband, don't die stupidly. Never, he says, meaning always, meaning he will try not to. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The rooftop is a page half turned. Wind flips corners of night and writes in the margins with rain so fine it counts as handwriting. The broker stands at the edge like punctuation that hasn't decided whether to be a period or a question mark. The spyglass lowers, ledger closes, coin nestles in a palm that thinks it is immune to consequence. Oarers fan, silent, amber becoming shadow. The veil inhabits darkness and calls it home. Harry steps into a cone of moonlight as if auditioning for honesty. Bellatrix does not step, she arrives, impossible to misplace. Good evening, Harry says, pleasant, selling minutes illegally is a boring crime. The broker turns, youth on the face, history in the eyes, accent that learned to be posh in back rooms where posh is a currency, not a birthright. Keystone, he says, admiring, and the laughing witch. What a dividend. Names, Bellatrix purrs, yours. Collector will do, he replies, smiling like a lock that knows it's about to be picked. I belong to a syndicate that teaches fate to accept bids. Fate isn't real, Harry says, easy, only choices and tidy stories told after. Then let's tidy, the collector murmurs, coin glinting, choose now, law or lash, child or city. Bellatrix's gaze becomes a corridor with a knife at the end. We choose both, she says, soft, law that does not devour the child. A child that bites law when it forgets its manners. The collector laughs, delighted, ah, paradox traders, my favorite. He flips the coin. It does not fall. It hangs, spinning, carving cold into the air like a surgeon cutting a future free of its mother. Threads unspool, thin, hungry, reaching for wrists, rings, oath. Now, Harry says, no louder than a prayer. The veil's glyphs ignite, web flares, threads bite their own tails, containment snaps like a jaw. The coin drops, metal clinks like a confession. Orders move, hands sure, spells soft, constraints settle like polite handshakes that turn into cuffs. The collector tries to jump sideways into a ledger and finds the page glued by consent. Bellatrix is there, hand on his wrist, grip elegant, irrefusable, say yes, she whispers, to a civilized arrest. He does. To his horror, he means it. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Back in the mirror room, the coin goes back in a jar and the collector sits in a chair that insists on good posture. Kingsley arrives with a silence that makes other silences behave. Hermione reads rights that never existed before tonight and exist now because she wrote them while people were busy being dramatic. Ron leans in a doorway, backup that tastes like home. Confession, Kingsley says, mild as tea, lethal as policy, or demonstration. The collector smiles because he is young enough to think losing gracefully builds legend. Demonstration. He lifts his hands, cuffed, permits rune ink to draw itself across the glass in letters that eat their own tails. The market offers 3 paths. Candor, constraint, cull. The third wriggles, refuses legibility, hates being seen. We sell which one wins. No, Harry says, simple, you tried. We withdrew the asset. Bellatrix steps into the second ring, reflections behave for her out of fear or admiration. Candor, she says, savored, truth that wounds cleanly. Constraint, she says, disliked, law that cages itself first. Cull, she says, contemptuously, cowardice that calls itself pruning. The room listens. The coin cools. The ledger in the collector's pocket moans like a spoiled child. Hermione taps the glass with a fingernail that learned patience in libraries that burned and still lent books. Who funds you? She asks, brisk. Names, accounts, owls. The collector's smile stays. His eyes betray a flinch in a memory where a debt ate a father. Clients enjoy discretion, but I can gift you a forecast. Your vote, tonight, fails or passes by 1. 1 what? Ron says, suspicious, 1 galleon, 1 ghoul. 1 heartbeat, the collector answers, pleased with his own poetry. Kingsley sighs the way gods do when mortals insist on inventing new sins. Enough, he says, charge, conspiracy to manipulate covenant outcomes, possession of proscribed contract artifacts, conducting unlicensed futures trade on public safety. The Veil scribes charges into the air, runes behaving like domesticated lightning. The Auror escorts the collector away, polite, unyielding. The coin shivers in its jar, alone for the first time since it learned to talk. Bellatrix watches it the way a cat watches a bathtub, fascinated, untempted. Shall we feed it to between, she muses, teach it taste. Later, Harry says, automatic now, trust that feels like a shared spine. We have a vote to ruin. Hermione hands him a parchment stack with the heft of a weapon that kills quietly, definitions, precedents, insults written in angelic calligraphy. You talk, she says, she glitters. Kingsley counts. Ron swears at the right moments to humanize you. Ron salutes with 2 fingers, solemn, ridiculous, perfect. The ring hums, between opens and closes like a heartbeat. In the glass, the crown of intersecting sigils brightens, consent looping the child claws until no hand but 2 can tighten it. The brand at Harry's sternum warms, Black star pointing not north but toward a future that feels like a room that will only open if two people carry a knife together and choose not to use it. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. They enter hearing chamber C late on purpose. Reporters go feral in orderly ways. Opponents stack arguments like firewood, dry, ready to catch. Allies look tired, and sharper for it. The motion on the docket reads like an apology that wants to be a coup. Invalidate Covenant 4 pending comprehensive review of unforeseen externalities. Harry speaks first because sometimes the trick is to say the reasonable thing before the performance begins. Unforeseen externalities, he says, mild, means other people didn't predict our enemies would get creative before lunch. He sets Hermione's definitions on the table, like law learning a better accent. We accounted for them by inventing tools you didn't have the courage or imagination to write yet. Bellatrix does not speak until silence has been trained to heal. Then she stands. The room leans. There is a market outside selling your fear back to you at a premium, she says, voice warmed with scorn. We just arrested its favorite clerk. She smiles. Slow, dangerous, beautiful, keep the covenant. Or admit you would rather be governed by coins than consent. Kingsley lets the silence count to 5, then to 7, then stops it at 9 because 10 would be indulgence. Vote, he says. Hands rise. Quills scratch. Numbers become decision. The motion fails by 1. The collector's prophecy dies of neglect. Harry doesn't smile. He breathes. Bellatrix smiles for both of them, teeth-like promises kept reluctantly and therefore well. Rita writes a headline that for once doesn't lie to make itself prettier. Horrors stand down in increments that read as grace. Hermione sits, finally, hands shaking in victory's aftershock. Ron grins like the inside of a good pub. The ring warms, between taps the inside of their skulls with knuckles that smell like home. The knife on the table gleams, hungry for honesty, satisfied by restraint. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Minnie Cliff. In a quiet corridor where portraits pretend to nap, the jarred coin fogs its quartz with a message it didn't know it could send without a hand to hold it. Issue, pending, it writes, letters thin, stubborn, accelerate pivot. In a ledger far from here, ink splits into 3 again, candor bright, constraint steady, cull thick as cheap blood. Somewhere under London, a door that was not on any map yesterday grows a hinge. A child's laugh echoes where no child stands, high, clear, undecided. The hinge creaks, deciding whether to be a mouth. Ellipsis. 3. Oversight and intrigue. Morning arrives like a verdict softened by tea. Sunlight threads through London's ribs, catching on ministry windows that prefer to gossip rather than reflect. The city pretends it slept. The Covenant did not. The Daily Prophet bleeds headlines that try to be both law and lullaby. Covenant survives tight vote, Potter black pair defy market meddlers. The ink smiles with too many teeth. The quibbler counters in luminous ink that refuses to dry properly, coins that talk, or they polite. Nocturne bets move like rats, fast, informed, amoral. Harry reads none of it before breakfast. He slices bread with the concentration of a man teaching his hands a modest task to remind them they are not only weapons. Bellatrix perches on a stool, hurtling an apple up and down. Catch, catch, each arc a curve of restraint. The ring hums against both pulses, low, content, watchful. Hermione arrives with a sheaf of parchment that thinks it's a sword. Ron follows with jam that thinks it's a treaty, sticky, generous, destined to be misapplied. Watch circle roster is finalized, Hermione says, dropping papers like friendly thunder. One Auror, Aquila right, calm as arithmetic. One unspeakable, designation Kestrel, precise as a heartbeat. One civilian observer, healer Maris Bryn, sharp, soft, terrifying in the correct order. Bellatrix bites the air where the apple had been just before catching it. Birds and tides, she purrs, right, Kestrel, Bryn. Someone in personnel has a poet chained in a basement. Probably, Ron says around toast, but at least the poet files on time. Harry nods, reading the short bios that filter facts through ministry anxieties. Aquila Wright, half-goblin grandmother, excellent at not escalating, has the poise of a door that only opens for the right knock. Kestrel, no gender disclosed, no face remembered, known for abducting lies mid-sentence and returning them trimmed. Maris Bryn, trauma healer, famously fired a department head for trying to weaponize a waiting room. This could work, Harry says, measured, if we don't frighten them and they don't try to domesticate us. Bellatrix smiles like a knife that accepts decorative engraving as a flirtation, not a compromise. Let us be charming, she says, and slightly venomous. It teaches people to handle us correctly. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. The watch circle assembles in the Potter townhouse's parlor at an hour that suggests decency and secretly tests punctuality. Aquila Wright arrives first, amber robes tailored, hair braided with metal thread that catches light only when it wants to be seen. Their gaze weighs, not measures, as if deciding which problems deserve to become stories. Head Potter, Aquila says, voice like a warm ledger, Lady Black. Bellatrix's answering nod is an aristocratic courtesy sharpened to purpose. Aquila, she returns, trying the name on the tongue, finding it tastes like a well-made hinge. Kestrel appears next without entering, there, then accounted for. Veil a matte black seated with tiny sigils that appear as afterimages if stared at, never when looked at directly. Consent lock is recognized, Kestrel says, tone technologically compassionate, between is outside our ingress. Maris Bryn arrives last, on time by her own clock, slate robes modified for speed and pockets. She inspects the room like a battlefield where the wounded will pretend not to be. I'm here to prevent the Covenant's lash from turning a moral lesson into a medical disaster, she says, gentle, unyielding. Welcome, Harry says, meant. We'll try not to make your job interesting. Maris smiles in a way that measures both sincerity and future triage. Try, she agrees, failing that, warn me. Hermione steps into the role of host and handler. Ground rules, she says, crisp, observation without intrusion. No mindroom access. Reporting with context, no decontextualized alarmism. Medical autonomy for both signatories regarding lash aftermath, consultation mandatory, coercion forbidden. Kestrel inclines. Aquila writes a single line in a small book that everyone can see. Maris arranges tools on a side table with a neatness that reads as respect. Bellatrix watches, amused and alert. We will be very good, she says, eyes glinting, until we are not. Ron coughs meaningfully into his tea. She's joking, he lies with love. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. The first oversight walkthrough is Diagon Alley at midday, safer by rumor, riskier by statistics. The street performs normality with competence, letters in windows, brooms stacked like sleepy spears, all on a perch considering a career change. Aquila walks a half step behind, near, not looming. Kestrel's reflection shows in windows that do not contain them. Maris keeps pace like a heartbeat, present, not loud. A small ripple moves ahead of them, not fear, expectation. People look, twice, then decide to pretend they hadn't. A child points, then his gently lowered hand first into a bag of sweets to redirect destiny. Bellatrix accepts the theater with surprising grace, focusing on how awnings cast law-shaped shadows. Harry focuses on rooflines and the places coins might whisper. A shopkeeper lifts a hand, then both, as if surrendering to his own politeness. Mr. Potter, Lady Black, congratulations, condolences, depending. He laughs too quickly, kindly, human. Want tune-ups half off today. We'll pay full, Harry says, automatic refusal of unfair advantage, and later. Generosity is currency, Bellatrix murmurs, and I'm rich in it today. Kestrel stills, veil darkening a shade. Anomalous pattern at 10 o'clock. Sustained attention from a non-present witness. Vector likely via reflective relay. Aquila pivots without drama. No change, they murmur, let it watch what we want watched. Harry sees it, feels it, how the light under the apothecary sign doesn't behave, how the kerning between letters is a fraction tighter when viewed from a 3/4 angle, how the shadow isn't. We're being mirrored, he says, steady, again. Bellatrix's smile sharpens. Mirror room, then, but portable. Maris opens her satchel and produces a compact panel of charmed glass housed in reinforced leather, field-grade reflection management. Borrow from Mungo's, she says, for patients who see things that aren't there, useful for people seeing things that are. Kestrel sets a chalkless circle on cobblestone that appears as light rather than dust. Aquila stands where they would stand if this were boring. Harry and Bellatrix step into the ring with the ease of performers entering a stage that pretends to be a clinic. Listening, Harry says, patient, dangerous when needed. The glass fogs, clears, fog returns, words scrawl backward, then right themselves as if embarrassed. Issue, pending, choose faster, buy time. The question mark wriggles like a worm trying to be a snake. Bellatrix tilts her head, admiring the audacity. Sweetling, she tells the mirror, we mint our own minutes. She breathes onto the glass, slow, controlled, painting a small heart that freezes into a rune that means not love but ownership by consent. The mirror flinches. Aquila steps in, voice polite as a no trespassing sign written by a poet. This is an oversight monitored space, they say. Unlicensed manipulation of covenant outcomes violates Articles 7 through 9. Penalties escalate, Kestrel adds, soft, final. The mirror coughs up a flicker of rooftop, the shape of a ledger, then snuffs itself into blankness. Maris catches the last pulse with a sensor that looks like a seashell taught to keep secrets. Trace captured, she says, I'll listen to it later where it can't hear me listening. Good, Harry says, relieved by competence. We move. They do. Behind them, sunlight looks normal again with the embarrassed cheeriness of a child caught cheating at a game no one explained properly. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. By late afternoon, the ministry decides to love optics more than policy. A press briefing is scheduled, where truth is boiled to safe flavors and served lukewarm. Kingsley stands at the lectern with dignity that makes microphones wish they were quills again. To his left, the watch circle presents a tableau of measured diversity. To his right, Harry and Bellatrix, Stormglass and Ink behaving themselves with theatrical discipline. The Covenant operates under oversight, Kingsley says, measured, without compromising autonomy or consent. Attempts to manipulate outcomes are being investigated, arrests have been made, additional charges are being prepared. Rita Skeeter's hand twitches like a snake deciding whether to strike or preen. Minister, what about House Black's influence? Are we to believe Bellatrix Black can be overseen by a committee? Bellatrix smiles slowly, Wolf discovering the theater cat can act. I can be overseen by a committee exactly as much as a committee can be overseen by me, she says, pleasant, which is to say, sufficiently, if everyone is clever. Laughter ripples, nervous, genuine, grateful for a sentence that admits danger while making room to breathe. Harry adds a two-sentence brick of reassurance that sounds like granite and reads like kindness. Our aim is fewer funerals and more choices, he says, hold us to that. The briefing closes without blood. Optics are pleased. Policy takes notes. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. At dusk, Narcissa arrives with a gift that declines to explain itself. A velvet box, small, heavy, old. Transactional truce, she says, eyes on Harry, then Bellatrix, a thing House Black should have burned, kept instead for a day when we required a better sin. Lucius lingers in the hall like a warning to dust itself. Consider it a hedge, he purrs, against an enemy that loves rules enough to starve on them. Harry opens the box. Inside, an amulet the size of a thumbnail, opal dark, fireflies trapped under glass. Runes coil like sleeping snakes, ancient, hungry, disciplined. Hermione leans in, brain flexing, it's a verity splitter. Old, dangerous. It forces any binding magic to show both its honest and dishonest interpretations, side by side, so arguments can't hide in ambiguity. Kestrel's veil brightens a degree as if smiling is possible if coded into runes. Useful, they say, and illegal. Narcissa lifts one shoulder with the elegance of a dual invitation written in perfume. Then you should keep it very safe. Bellatrix takes the amulet with reverence that refuses to call itself reverence. I'll wear it against my throat, she murmurs, where lies go to die. Maris studies the object like a patient's scan. It will bruise, she warns, it bruises truth and skin. Bruises or receipts, Bellatrix replies, pleased. Harry hesitates only long enough to admit the risk has a shape he recognizes, then nods. We accept, he says, quiet, with gratitude and caution. Narcissa's smile is winter thanking a candle for trying. Do not make me regret it. Never twice in a row, Bellatrix says, glinting. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Night peels back a layer of London to reveal a version of the city that never applied for planning permission. Rooflines speak in ledger slang. Gutters count. Chimneys exhale alibis. The broker syndicate feels the day's failures in their wrists and decides to steal something that breathes differently. The unspeakable kestrel vanishes between one step and the next. A corridor, ordinary, then Their veil flares, then snuffs. A rune coil rolls gently to a stop where a foot should have been. The coil pulses once, twice, then subsides, decorous grief. Aquila, 3 doors away, feels the absence like gravity deciding to be whimsical. Down, they bark, already moving, voice like an oar catching water. Alarms whisper instead of scream because screaming is vulgar and attracts the wrong kind of attention. Harry and Bellatrix are in the mirror room with Maris and Hermione when the air leans. The ring burns cold. Between opens without being asked. Kestrel, Hermione says, color draining, ink still steady, gone. Bellatrix moves, no theatrics, only speed that reads as an argument with fate. Trace, she snaps. Maris slams a jar onto the silver table, releasing the earlier captured reflection pulse. It spills like light under a door, thin ribbon, leading outward as if embarrassed to be useful. Aquila meets them at the corridor junction, face set into competence, not fear, left, then down, then wrong. Wrong, Ron echoes, grim, love that for us. They follow the ribbon through a wall that believes in shared delusions stronger than it believes in stone. Stairs become shallows. Floors become pages. The ministry becomes the thing it really is, a habit wearing a badge. At the bottom of the wrong is a door that was built last night by a decision nobody remembers making. It has a hinge that wasn't there yesterday, a hinge the coin forecast, and the air around it smells like ledger ink and old bedtime stories the wrong grandparent told. The door is not locked because locks are for amateurs. Aquila touches the jamb with 2 fingers and a question. The wood does not answer, so they do what professionals do when a thing refuses dignity, they proceed while daring it to be worse than rumor. The room beyond is larger than it should be, rectangular like an argument, lit by light that leaks from contracts pinned to walls. In the center, Kestrel, bound in threads of arithmetic, each strand labeled with a word that thinks it's a law. Bias, says one, tight. Precedent, says another, smug. Efficiency, says a third, hungry. The collector stands at the far end with his hands on a ledger that breathes shallowly, overworked, overfed, sick. He is not alone. Figures in gray that refuses to pick a color line the wall, faces covered in mirrors that show not reflections but values, percentages, odds. Keystone, the collector greets, unruffled, and laughing witch, welcome to the desk. Bellatrix takes 1 step forward and the room decides to grow teeth, then thinks better of it. Release our Kestrel, she says, voice turned to wire, and kneel. The collector smiles, tender, cruel, genuine in the way only predators who respect other predators are. Trade, he says, you want your bird. We want your hinge. Harry feels the brand at his sternum warm, black star pointing not north but toward a choice that will not consent to be delayed. He places his palm flat on air, between hums, knife glinting in a place no one else can see. Consent is prime. The room tastes the sentence and finds it lacks sugar. Maris moves like a healer who never forgot the first body that didn't survive her best work. You're strangling and unspeakable with conflated metrics, she says, fierce, let them breathe. Or I will make this room remember what breath is made of. Aquila flanks, professional patience radaring exits and angles. Ron mutters a profanity that submits paperwork afterward. Hermione raises a parchment shield that reads like a librarian arming herself for revolution. The collector flicks a coin. It hangs, spins, threads reach. Bellatrix lifts the verity splitter to her throat, opal flares, bruise already promising itself to her skin. Show both meanings, she whispers, of every thread, now. The room convulses, sudden, delighted, betrayed. Labels split into twins, bias, becomes, bias, and, protection, precedent, becomes, precedent, and, excuse, efficiency, becomes, efficiency, and, apathy. Half the threads loosen, ashamed, others tighten, proud to be seen. Kestrel gasps, veil fluttering, eyes invisible, presence returning like tide. Harry steps through loosened lines, hands bare, voice steady. "We'll offer a hinge," he says, "but not the one you asked for." He lifts his hand to show not an object but an idea. Consent is prime, looping the child clause, yoking law to mercy. "This hinge," he says, "makes your market unprofitable." The figures in gray tilt their mirrored faces. Percentages waver, odds growl, some drop to zero like guilty secrets falling. Downstairs, the collector's smile thins, but holds. "Counter offer," he purrs, "you keep your hinge. We keep our bird for an hour. We write a story about your weakness that costs you a vote." "No," Bellatrix says, pleasant, final. She takes Harry's hand, without looking, together they reach for the knife that nobody else can touch. Between closes around their fingers with the ease of a habit that is becoming love by accident and will be furious if named. They lift. They cut a single thread, cull, which had crept in as a footnote masquerading as a principle. The sound is like a scream being politely escorted out. Kestrel collapses forward into Aquila's waiting reach. Maris is already there, spellwork like stitches forged from light and consent. The gray figures shudder, mirrors cracking hairline, numbers leaking. The collector steps back, ledger defensive, coin hissing, accelerate, he whispers to the air that usually obeys him. The air does not. The hinge in the new door laughs once, high, childlike, terrifying. The room dims as if embarrassed to have chosen the wrong loyalties. Bellatrix lowers the verity splitter, opal dimming, bruise blooming at her throat in the shape of a crescent that looks like a smile taught better manners. "We are tedious to cheat," she informs the room. Harry nods to Kingsley's arriving shadow, oars pouring like well-trained rain. "Charges expand," he says, calm. "Kidnapping, coercion, unlicensed metaphysical architecture, attempted policy laundering." The collector weighs roots, angles, stories. He bows, once, infuriatingly graceful. "Until the market invents a better lie," he says, gentle, keystone. Laughing witch. Bellatrix's eyes glitter like knives that learned lullabies. The brand at Harry's sternum cools. Kestrel breathes. The hinge breathes. The coin sulks. The ledger snaps shut. 4. Rite of restoration. Midnight arrives dressed as etiquette, gloves on its hands, ash on its cuffs, a ribbon of frost at its throat. The city lowers its voice to listen to old houses breathe. Somewhere under polite neighborhoods, a chamber wakes to count who still knows the password to their own name. House Black's townhouse receives them like a rumor deciding to be true. Stone remembers arguments. Carpets remember blood that apologized afterward. Portraits pretend to sleep, brushstrokes cracked where honesty tried to grow. Narcissa leads with a candle that disdains soot. Lucius trails like punctuation that refuses to be optional. "The right waits," Narcissa says. "Quiet, it was always waiting, only you were late." Bellatrix's smile is a blade wrapped in silk so nobody bleeds unless invited. "Then let it enjoy my entrance," she purrs, "it has been bored for decades." Harry's ring warms, between taps once against bone, patient, alert. The brand at his sternum stirs, black star recalling itself into brightness like an eye opening to check if dawn kept its promise. Hermione and Ron flank with the watch circle, Aquila steady, Kestrel recovered but thin at the edges, Maris all soft steel, Kingsley a silhouette that convinces architecture to cooperate. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. The ancestral chamber sits where the cellar pretends to end. Walls are stone older than apology, lined with niches that hold candles which light only when looked at with unkind love. On the floor, circles nested like family secrets, outer ring for witnesses, inner for the accused or the brave, center for the truth that both prefers and detests company. Overhead, a ceiling painted in a night that remembers stars who resigned. An advocate waits, mask smooth as ever, voiceless face that manages to pronounce judgment without syllables. On a stand, an old ledger that does not breathe because it refuses theatrics, a black family book that weighs more than forgiveness and less than pride. The verity splitter rests at Bellatrix's throat, opal dim light, bruise from the desk like a crescent promise. House Black calls Bellatrix to restoration, the advocate intones, voice the weight of a will heard by those who squandered and those who saved, and recognizes Harry Potter, bearer of Black's star, counterweight and companion. Terms. No compulsion, consent prime, witness present, healer set. Maris nods, tools neat, eyes kinder than mercy. Kestrel's veil flickers once as if remembering the threads that tried to strangle and failing to be impressed. Aquila writes a line in their small book, Restoration prefers honesty to dramaturgy. Lucius arranges himself into approval. Narcissus' hands relax by an inch, small victory, huge truth. Bellatrix steps into the inner circle. The room leans. Harry steps with her. The ring pulses, between opens like a held breath, knife on the table visible only to consent. They do not lift it. Not yet. Begin, says the advocate. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The circle becomes a hall with 7 doors. Each door bears a title scrawled in old filigree: wrath, loyalty, joy, cruelty, mercy, ambition, name. The right invites a path and insists on all. Bellatrix does not hesitate, she chooses joy first, because enemies expect darker appetites. The door opens onto a room with no floor, only air held together by music. Laughter hangs in skeins, memories threaded like beads. Joy arrives as a fox with paint on its paws. What do you enjoy? It asks, voice like sugar taught to argue. Bellatrix smiles without teeth. Precision, she says, risk, competence, men who don't bore me, women who don't apologize for existing, rivals who learn. Joy tilts its head, amused. And cruelty. Bellatrix does not look away. Sometimes, she says, when laziness wears its skin. Joy pads forward, paints her wrists with light that smells of rain after bad news. Keep this, it says, you'll need to remember pleasure that isn't a weapon. Harry steps forward, offering a palm Joy didn't ask for. I enjoy repair, he says, quiet, and laughter that doesn't require anyone to bleed. Joy paints him too, thin line, bare, enough. The door exhales approval. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Wrath waits behind a door made of nails. The room is small, hot, air the thickness of arguments. Wrath is a hammer that wanted to be a choir. Show me, it demands. Bellatrix's hands hang loose, empty, dangerous. I killed your cousin, she says, to the room, to herself. I laughed while doing it, because grief was a throat I refused to swallow. Wrath flares, hungry, expectant. She continues, voice now a scalpel, if you ask for sacrifice, I will hand you my joy first, not my mind. Wrath, confused, interested, ashamed to realize it wanted obedience not honesty. It touches her brow, leaves heat in the shape of a rule, anger at the powerful first. Harry steps into the furnace with his own embers. I wanted her dead, he says, plain, sometimes still do when the world is lazy. Wrath taps his sternum, brands what was already marked, temper for tyrants, not for the loved. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Cruelty's door is velvet on this side, bone on the other. Inside, mirrors that only show hands. Cruelty is a tutor with immaculate nails. Admit me or starve me, it says, choose. Bellatrix breathes, long, counted. She lifts her hands, empty, honest. I will starve you of laziness, she says, and feed you only. Precision where surgery is needed. The mirrors approve, crack, heal, remember. Cruelty bows at the waist like a gentleman who knows he is uninvited but appreciates the courtesy. Harry's hands in the mirrors are blunt, scarred, clean. You get none, he tells Cruelty, and if I borrow you, I return you, washed. Cruelty drifts back, insulted into respect. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Loyalty stands behind a door covered in fingerprints. Inside, tables, chairs, coats on hooks, laughter soaked into wood, graves in the floorboards. Loyalty is a dog who learned to read. First, second, third, it says, testing. Law, spouse, city, Bellatrix answers, smiling, we take turns putting each first. Loyalty wags, old, wise, pleased to be treated like an adult. People, promise, self, Harry says, we braid them, we don't rank them to break them. Loyalty licks his hand, embarrassed, happy. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mercy's door is the heaviest, hinges singing with use not rust. Inside, cots, basins, light that flatters nothing. Mercy is a woman with tired eyes and clean hands. Maris recognizes herself and looks away politely. What won't you forgive? Mercy asks. Myself, when cowardice borrows my mouth, Bellatrix says, steady, and those who harm children to make law cheap. Mercy nods, gives nothing, keeps the answer on a high shelf. People who sell fear, Harry says, and people who consume it unchewed. Mercy's eyes soften, she shows him a bed, empty, waiting, he refuses to lie down. She approves. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Ambition's door is a mirror, no frame. Inside, stairs that climb into fog, each step labeled with something that tastes like temptation. What do you want? Ambition asks, voice like a contract that learned courtesy. Dominion, Bellatrix says, grinning, then, after a beat that would fool a poorer judge, over myself. The stairs shift, offer a landing with a window she can open only when she has learned to close it. Peace, Harry says, then, unflinching, and power enough to protect it without being owned by it. Ambition inclines, hands him a key that opens no doors and all decisions. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Name waits at the last door, plain wood, no title, because names are what make titles pretend to matter. Inside, silence that behaves. Name is a scribe who inks in blood and receipts and refuses to be hurried. Say yourself, it says. Bellatrix breathes the old way, lungs full, world sharp. I am Bellatrix Black, she says, I am not a Lestrange chain. I am not a story told by men who mistook my laugh for a leash. The scribe writes, Bellatrix's letters look like lightning learning grammar. Harry's turn. I am Harry James Potter, he says, I am head of House Potter, bearer of Black Star, husband to Bellatrix, keystone of a thing I will not let devour its builders. The scribe writes until the quill smokes with friction. The doors dissolve. The hall folds. The circle returns. The advocate raises a hand that does not exist and lowers it as if blessing an argument. Restoration proceeds, the voice declares, sovereignty affirmed. House Black yields to Bellatrix Black, not to ghosts. House Potter takes mark of parley within Black's vaults, access bounded by consent and competence. Light condenses, fine as ash, heavy as promise. It gathers at Harry's sternum, Black's star flares, then threads a line from him to Bellatrix and down into the stone at their feet, into a vault no map deserves. Pain arrives, not cruelty, cost. He bears it without theater. Maris watches closely, mercy ready, unneeded. Bellatrix's eyes dilate, pleasure and power tasting each other carefully. Vault, she says, breath. A ribbon, awake. The floor responds, stone voice like a sleeping god stirring. Bellatrix. Potter. Password. Bellatrix smiles, wolf with a library card. Between, she says, soft. The wards shiver with laughter that respects itself. A door lines the floor, spectral, marking the place where sovereignty meets storage. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The witnesses exhale, the room rearranges itself into something almost domestic, tea table appears because Narcissa thinks ahead. Lucius pretends not to be relieved. Kingsley files the sensation under progress. Hermione writes until ink considers unionizing. Ron chews a biscuit like it's a medal. Aquila notes that the floor has opinions. Kestrel stands very still to check all their pieces are still present. Access, Harry says, still catching the edge of pain with humor, what can we touch without being eaten? Etiquette, Narcissa answers, eyes soft, lethal, House Black eats only the disrespectful and the dull. Bellatrix kneels, not submission, practicality, palms on stone. Vault, she purrs, show us the shelf labeled, we should have burned this. The spectral seam opens, a window into inventory appears, objects blur behind gauze, old curses, older promises, a jar of thunder that forgot its storm. One item pulses, mournful, curious, bound in law rather than rope. That, Bellatrix says, amused, the scion writ. Hermione leans in, intellect hungry. A codicil that lets a house define succession outside blood if the blood is stupid, she breathes, thrilled, horrified, 19th century, banned, hidden, of course. Aquila's brows rise by exactly 2 millimeters. Dangerous. Delicious, Bellatrix counters, when used sparingly. Harry's jaw firms, decision lining up with ethics like teeth finding their mates. We do not touch it tonight, he says, we label it, study it, decide later when temptation isn't painting our better angels. Bellatrix's mouth curves, agreement that tastes like flirtation because discipline is her favorite seduction. Later, she echoes, I prefer expensive choices when I'm not hungry. The vault sighs, pleased by manners, closes its window to think about them. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The advocate clears a throat made of rules. One last measure, it announces, bond resilience under black law. A lattice of light rises around Harry and Bellatrix, delicate, merciless, testing. It plucks the oath-like strings, listens for false notes, leans on verbs, weighs nouns. The verity splitter warms, opal flaring, bruise deepening. Maris steps closer, not to stop, only to catch if needed. Questions fall without sound. Are you yourselves? Are you lying to keep love pretty? Will your law eat you if you forget to feed it? What price will you not pay, and is that stubbornness or wisdom? They answer by not breaking. They answer by not triumphing. They answer by standing. Resilience sufficient, the lattice decides, vanishing with the embarrassment of a good burglar. The advocate inclines, mask learning respect. Bellatrix's knees almost soften, almost. Harry sways like a tree that has decided storms are exercise. Hermione's exhale is a blessing disguised as scolding they will receive later. Ron's grin is a pub closing late. Aquila writes a second line. Restoration successful, cost fair, ego tempered. Kestrel hums approval in a key that sours lies. Kingsley looks 10 years older and a hair lighter. Narcissa steps forward, places a hand, cool, proud, on Bellatrix's cheek. Sister, she says, do not spend yourself all at once. Bellatrix turns her face to press a quick kiss to the cool hand, affection forged in fire and etiquette. I'll amortize, she promises, smile wicked with economics. Lucius produces a sigh like a ribbon cutting. House Black stands its woman, he declares, and by accident, its Potter. Harry inclines with the humility of a man who knows compliments can be traps and sometimes walks into them on purpose to set off the wrong mechanism. Accepted. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They adjourn to a smaller room where victory can pretend to be tea. Steam rises from cups like spirits that went home early. The verity splitter has cooled, opal dim, a half-moon bruise glowing faint on Bellatrix's throat, an honest necklace. Hermione catalogues. Maris checks pupils and pulse. Aquila has a biscuit. Kestrel leans on a wall that doesn't mind. Kingsley speaks softly into the air, orders that become paperwork that becomes the difference between chaos and government. Harry's ring warms, between touches his attention, knife on table gleaming like a thought that needs saying. He looks at Bellatrix. She is already looking back, eyes the exact color of trouble invited in and given tea and rules. Between, he says, sub-voice, 5 minutes. Consent, she breathes, pleased. They step in, chairs, table, knife. The room smells like wood and intention. They sit, hands near the blade, distance measured and chosen. Cyan writ, Harry says, no flourish, tempting. Exquisite, Bellatrix replies, and a trap if touched hungry. Later, they say together, then grin like thieves who decided to return a jewel to make the guard trust them for the bigger heist. Ethics, not theft. The knife brightens, between purrs, room satisfied with restraint again. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Aquila taps the doorframe, professional throat clear. We have a problem, they say, calm, or a plot. Same word, different perfumes, Bellatrix murmurs, standing. Kestrel holds out a small object pinched in forceps, a rune coil cousin, faintly humming. Found at the outer ring, non-ministry, echoes desk geometry, polite enough to get in, rude enough to leave a calling card. Hermione frowns, delight and fury shaking hands. A listening worm, anchored to the hinge door we found, piggybacks on new architecture. Maris glances at Bellatrix's throat, then the coil, calculating bruises and choices. Do not feed it truth directly, she says, it will choke and then scratch on the way out. Lucius tightens his smile, our broker acquaintances think subtlety is a tax bracket they can't afford. Kingsley's job becomes policy. We trace again, he says, and we make an example that votes can understand. Harry nods, already placing the coil on the silver table in the mirror room. Protocols clicked into place like respect's teeth. Bellatrix lifts the Verity Splitter with 2 fingers, admiring how an honest tool looks like jewelry and hurts like discipline. We'll show them both meanings, she says, and let their lies choose a less interesting career. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They array themselves around the mirror room's silver lake, Aquila at the hinge, Kestrel at the shade, Maris with soft hands and hard rules, Hermione with parchment that eats ambiguity for breakfast, Kingsley with patience that terrifies impatience, Lucius and Narcissa like expensive punctuation, Ron with a grin that would fight for the bill. Bellatrix and Harry stand in the first ring, together, between attentive, the knife refusing to be lonely. Proceed, the Veil's voice advises, gentle thunder. The coil awakens, lines unspooling, mirrors trying to practice friendliness. The Verity Splitter warms, a crescent at a throat, truth peeled like fruit with a sharp knife. Bellatrix breathes onto the glass, draws a heart. That means ownership by consent, not romance, rune flares. Harry places his palm near, the room remembers restraint. Tiny letters skitter across the mirror, issue, pending, accelerate pivot, candor versus constraint, self-fear, by law. 2 interpretations appear, side by side, one reads as policy advice, the other as extortion. The room decides it prefers honesty. The extortion version glows like a wound. Trace, Kestrel murmurs, glyphs lifting, reweaving, rooftops, old bank, ledger house. Narcissa breathes a syllable that breaks glass 3 centuries away. Lucius looks pleased to be angry. Kingsley's eyes go very kind, dangerous. The coil twitches, tries to cut the trace, finds itself strangled politely by consent. It gives up the path like a liar shown their reflection in a better mirror. Let's take a walk, Harry says, quiet. Let's take a ledger, Bellatrix corrects, smiling. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Rooftops again, London balancing coins on its skyline and daring gravity to complain. Ledger House sits with Victorian arrogance, columns, cornices, the expensive boredom of empire. The broker syndicate arranged itself in rooms with good ceilings because high crimes like height. Aurors ring the perimeter like patience. The watch circle splits, Aquila on the door, Kestrel on the shadow, Maris on the consequence. Kingsley's hand lifts, falls, action becomes law. Inside, ledgers breathe and hate being caught at it. The collector stands before a wall of mirrors showing odds as art, percentages tattooed across silver. Gray figures adjust models with the confidence of mathematicians who forgot variables have mouths. Accelerate, someone says, then chokes on the word as if it disagrees. Bellatrix enters as if reviewing a theater, critical, generous, armed with taste and a wand. Harry moves with the calm of a storm that determined its route before anyone else believed in weather. The Verity Splitter glows, brews new and old, mirror light bending around consent as if laws remember who built them. Hello, Bellatrix says, pleasant, O ye who price futures in children's names. Market, Harry says, dry, closed for audit. Numbers flicker, panic-ridden in decimals. The collector lifts his hands, performative innocence. We sell stories, he says, people choose. People choose when not lied to by arithmetic, Hermione says from the doorway, voice carrying footnotes like knives. Kestrel raises a palm, glyphs leap, threads pin odds to truth, odds stop misbehaving. Aquila moves like chess learning to dance, positions, locks, breathes. Maris stations herself near a gray figure whose hands shake at the thought of consequence and steadies them with a glance that forgives only what is repaired. Demonstration, the collector offers, wry, suicidal, hopeful. Let the Verity Splitter show our model, both meanings. Bellatrix obliges, opal flares, bruise deepens to a signature. The mirrors split, 2 images each, one honest, one greedy. The honest shows donations to orphanages, reform of policy incentives, profitable patience. The greedy shows engineered panics, debt traps, narrative crimes. The room goes very quiet in the way rooms go quiet right before regret earns its salary. Kingsley's voice is a verdict tired of waiting. Charges multiply, he says, soft, seize assets, freeze accounts, unspool contracts, summon benches, wake judges, call owls. The gray figures lower their heads, seeing at last that numbers are not gods, just servants, and they have been fed too well. The collector watches Bellatrix and Harry like a student who failed the test and discovered the subject is more beautiful than he deserved. Keystone, he says, tender, laughing witch. He almost bows, almost. He looks at the coin in his palm, does not flip it. He closes his hand. I resign, he whispers, to the room, not to them. Keep your talent, Bellatrix advises, voice a satin warning, lose your appetite. Harry meets the collector's eyes long enough to make a bridge and then refuses to cross it. Mercy is not a promise, only a possibility. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Back in the ancestral chamber, the vault door line glows again, curious, pleased. Potter, black, it murmurs, stone learning affection, ledger closed. For now, Harry answers, until numbers learn manners permanently. Numbers never do, Bellatrix says, amused, but their keepers can be taught. Narcissa pours tea into cups that earned it. Lucius polishes a cufflink that sinned by existing. Hermione writes law that didn't exist at breakfast. Aquila files an immaculate report. Kestrel stands in a corner and breathes the kind of quiet that makes rooms behave. Maris presses a salve to Bellatrix's bruise, cool, honest, earned. Receipts, Bellatrix murmurs, pleased, I keep them. The ring hums, between warms, knife content. The brand at Harry's sternum cools to a star that knows where to point next. The city outside inhales, holds, waits. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mini cliff. Below the oldest vault shelf, behind a panel nobody alive remembers, something written in living ink wakes at the scent of restoration and consent braided. It unfurls into a ledger not of debts but of choices deferred, 3 lines bright, candor, constraint, and a third line that refuses a name yet insists on a voice. In the stillness, the unnamed line speaks across stone in a child's timbre without a child's ignorance, don't choose for me. The vault listens, house black listens, oath listens, city listens, and on a roof somewhere a discarded coin cracks hairline as if it had a heart. Ellipsis. ... 5. Candor, constraint. Morning is a ledger written in light across London's bricks and river. The Covenant hums like a second heartbeat that learned the city's rhythm overnight. Newspapers attempt to domesticate yesterday. Some succeed with teeth hidden behind commas. Some fail with glittering confidence. Bellatrix watches steam curl from her tea as if it were a prophecy attempting manners. The bruise at her throat arcs like a crescent signature left by truth. Harry slices an orange with the concentration of a man reminding his hands that usefulness is not only war. The ring is warm and quiet and awake. Hermione arrives with parchment that smells of ink and solved problems. Ron follows with a box of pastries and an apology to the concept of restraint. Aquila, Kestrel, and Maris take places around the table like chess pieces that refuse to be predictable. Triplicate oaths for issue, Hermione says. Custody, candor, constraint. We codify them now, even if issue remains metaphysical. The law cannot be allowed to make up a childhood on its own. Bellatrix tilts her head. We define what we would teach a child who is not a child yet. A curriculum for a future that refuses to be furniture. Harry nods. Custody is guardianship, not ownership. Candor is truth that wounds cleanly, not cruelty pretending to be honesty. Constraint is discipline chosen, not cages disguised as care. Aquila writes the 3 words into a small book with letters that look like they intend to be remembered. Kestrel's veil warms a shade, glyphs surfacing like fish in clear water. Maris pours tea, watching mouths, hands, and silences for signs of strain. Draft the clauses, Hermione says. Short, enforceable, human. Bellatrix's voice is silk wrapped around steel. Custody. Any issue of Potter Black will be housed in consent, fed by choice, taught to refuse any hand that calls itself love while holding a leash. Harry's voice is granite with a meadow on top. Candor. We will speak truth to the child even when it costs us our beauty. We will not design their beliefs to spare our reputations. Hermione's quill writes like a violin bow. Constraint. No punishment that cannot be explained without lies. No rule that cannot be broken to save a life. The ring thrums once. Between opens its door a finger's width. The knife glints on the table in the place only consent can see. They do not touch it. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Diagon Alley pretends to be safe at noon and succeeds for 5 minutes. Sunlight pools in shop windows. Brooms hang like polite spears. A busker plays a tune that forgives nothing and comforts anyway. The first ambush arrives as a bouquet. A spray of violets levitates into the air and unfolds into lettered petals. Each petal bears a pretty word. Unity, heritage, safety. The bouquet detonates without sound, releasing a cloud of fine runes that aim for throats and wrists. Aquila moves first, already where they need to be. Shields bloom in translucent hexagons. Kestrel snaps a wrist and the cloud stutters, algorithms deprived of arrogance. Maris threads stabilizing blue through the air, mapping where lungs will argue later. Bellatrix smiles a surgeon's smile. Lazy cruelty dressed for tea. Her wand draws a clean line. Letters split. The words unity, heritage, safety reveal their second faces. Uniformity, purity, control. Harry anchors, palms open, voice steady. Return to sender. The Covenant hears an honest sentence spoken in a tone built for weather. The rebound bites, not in gore, in lesson. 3 casters in the crowd find their wrists weighed by their own rhetoric. The runes bind without breaking bone. The lash marks their magic with small, honest bruises. Hermione throws a net of definitions that wrap the attack with context and prevent headlines from lying by omission. Ron plants himself between the busker and history and dares the day to pick him instead. Names, Aquila says to the nearest trembling caster. And the coin you were promised. The boy's lips are dry and brave. Ledger House. A whisper in the hinge room. A trick that said safety means silence. Bellatrix's gaze turns to a narrow alley with shadows that look like secrets already tired of themselves. Let us teach constraint to walk in public. Harry nods. And candor to speak. Kestrel retrieves a sliver of mirror from the bouquet's ghost. It hums like a light trapped in glass. Trace intact. Rooftops again. Maris touches each bound wrist without pity or pleasure. You will be fine. You will be wiser if you choose it. The crowd breathes. The busker changes key to something that sounds like a spine growing stronger. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. The press conference is announced without the ministry's permission by the simple act of 2 people standing where sound carries. Steps of Gringotts. Columns like unsheathed threats. Goblins watch with predatory courtesy. Kingsley takes the top stair and speaks with the serenity of a man navigating between truth and panic with a map he drew himself. There was an attack. It failed. Rebounds were bounded. This is how the Covenant behaves when law is obeyed. Rita Skeeter's quill vibrates. And the children claws. Are we grooming a future policy? Bellatrix's smile contains knives that learn to purr. We are grooming a future human. Policies will adjust or be replaced. Harry's voice is quiet enough to make people step closer. Custody is guardianship. Candor is truth over comfort. Constraint is discipline, not control. A murmur like the beginning of a weather change moves through the crowd. Some faces soften, some harden. All remember. Aquila reads the edges. Kestrel watches reflections choose. Maris catalogues breathing patterns like prayers. Hermione steps forward with text. Shockingly short, shockingly sharp. Triplicate oaths. Custody. Candor. Constraint. Filed today. Public. Enforceable. Rita's quill stops vibrating long enough to look impressed. Enforceable how? Hermione smiles pleasantly at the concept of skepticism when it behaves. By consent-based triggers. By oversight. By not lying. Bellatrix lifts her chin to expose the crescent at her throat like a flag. Receipts. The goblins smirk without moving facial muscles not listed in treaties. Gringotts prefers ledgers that tell the truth because they do not enjoy surprises that aren't theirs. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Narcissa arrives at the townhouse with a small velvet box that weighs more than some cousins. Lucius follows, wearing an expression that converts cynicism into couture. A transactional blessing, Narcissa says. And a caution. Inside the box waits an inkstone as black as a closed night. Runes curl around its rim like sleeping cats. House Black's candor, Narcissa says. An ink that bites gentle hands and devours soft lies. Write the 3 oaths with this and they will not wash out of the law without blood and public laughter. Hermione's eyes shine with pure, weaponized gratitude. I'll draft the plates. Bellatrix traces the inkstone with a finger and nearly hisses when the truth nips her skin in greeting. Hungry beauty. We will feed it. Harry sets out parchment. Aquila, Kestrel, and Maris become witnesses with the gravity of stones around a well. Kingsley takes a pen that knows how to be quiet. Custody, Hermione reads. Harry writes. Bellatrix writes. The ink drinks. The room learns a new smell. Candor, Hermione reads. Harry writes. Bellatrix writes. The bruise at her throat warms. The ring hums. Constraint, Hermione reads. Harry writes. Bellatrix writes. The knife in between glints with approval no one hears except those who choose to. Narcissa smiles like winter acknowledging spring's thesis. Lucius restrains an impatient sigh and succeeds. Aquila adds a witness mark that looks like a ledger balanced to zero without trickery. Kestrel adds a sigil that refuses to be misread by machines or men. Maris adds a flourish that means dignity in 3 dialects of pain. Kingsley adds the seal of a ministry that wants to deserve itself. The ink dries into law. The law breathes. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Evening draws a line through the sky like a closing argument. Harry and Bellatrix patrol nocturne under lanterns that pretend innocence and fail at the corners. The air smells of metal, ambition, and the past. Here, Bellatrix says at a crossroads where shadows argue about jurisdiction. A boy leans against a wall, jaw set in borrowed defiance. A girl watches from a doorway with eyes that know too much and refuse to sell the knowledge cheap. A man at a stall counts a stack of coins with relief that tastes like superstition. A quiet hex moves like a fish under dark water. Not aimed at flesh, aimed at a promise. A word flickers on a poster that lists the new triplicate oaths. The hex attempts to replace candor with comfort. The covenant box. The rebound chooses accuracy over pain. The caster finds his own mouth speaking the truth he tried to erase. I am afraid of being made ordinary. Bellatrix regards him with a surgeon's curiosity and a priest's unwillingness to flatter sin. Good. Speak fear to its correct address. Harry gestures at the poster. Candor stands. Comfort visits. Hermione, arriving at speed with Aquila and Kestrel, captures the failed swap in a small glass that argues with itself. Evidence that lies prefer velvet. Useful for training. Maris touches the caster's wrist. Breathe. Being ordinary is not a disease. A voice from a window says something crude about House Black's new habit of lecturing. Bellatrix's smile becomes unprintable. Lecture. No. Tuition. The window closes with the dignity of a retreat that will be rewritten later as a tactical repositioning. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Back in the mirror room, the coil from the hinge door wakes as if insulted by the day's honesty and determined to commit new crimes. It sketches numbers into the glass that add up to a trap. Constraint, it writes, equals control. Candor, equals cruelty. The verity splitter warms. Bellatrix breathes onto the mirror. 2 readings appear side by side like duelists practicing courtesy before murder. Constraint is self-mastery. Constraint is cage. Candor is surgical truth. Candor is weaponized humiliation. Candor without tenderness is a cheap thrill, Harry says. Constraint without consent is a theft. The room simplifies. The correct readings intensify. The wrong ones wilt like hypocrisy in summer. Kestrel traces the coil's route into a pocket ledger across town. Aquila prepares the phrase that makes doors open politely and quickly. Kingsley moves resources with the delicacy of a thief returning a stolen heart. Maris sets her kit in order like a lullaby for bodies that might forget how to behave under pressure. They go. Ledger House again. Not the rooftop. The basement this time, where money grows mold and ideas grow teeth. Gray figures rehearse panic using spreadsheets as rosaries. The collector is absent. A new voice presides. Sharp. Cold. Efficient. A woman with hair pinned like a crown built from paperclips looks up. Constraint, she says without greeting. Everyone prefers cages they pretend to choose. Bellatrix steps forward, verity splitter bright at her throat, crescent dark and honest. Some of us prefer knives we refuse to lift. Harry's tone is river over stone. Close the books. Turn on the lights. Hermione holds up a parchment that is not a threat but will feel like one to anyone misusing grammar. Public filing. Triplicate oaths registered. Any attempt to redefine terms triggers oversight and laughter. Aquila leans against a desk and makes the word lawful feel like a compliment. Kestrel unrolls a ribbon of glyphs that snare risk without making anyone bloody. Maris stands between a clerk and a panic attack and reminds breathing how to be a friend. The woman with the paperclip crown tries to flip a coin. It drops. It rolls. It stops at Bellatrix's boot and refuses to be picked up without consent. Candor, Bellatrix says. Tell the room what you've been selling. The woman considers lying. The verity splitter shines. She sighs the sigh of a professional caught by professionals. We sell stories that turn courage into commodity. We buy fear to resell it with better margins. Harry does not flare. He nods to Aquila. Inventory. Sees. Numbers fall off walls with the sound of treachery embarrassed. Kestrel's ribbon tightens. Maris takes the woman's wrist, checks a pulse, and chooses not to forgive. Kingsley signs a shape in the air that becomes warrants like moths blessed into angels. The basement gives up its crimes with bad grace. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Night finds the townhouse again. The inkstone rests like a satisfied predator after a meal of lies. The triplicate oaths hang framed where sunlight will have to argue with them when it wakes. The ring hums. The brand at Harry's sternum is cool and precise. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen, not enforced. Candor, Harry says. To each other. Bellatrix's eyes are a corridor with lamps lit. Confession. I am tempted by the cyanide because power feels like a cure on certain days. Harry's mouth almost smiles. Counter confession. I want to burn it because fire feels like peace on certain days. They do not touch the knife. The room approves. Constraint, Bellatrix says. I will not use fear to speed your agreement. Constraint, Harry answers. I will not use pity to speed yours. The knife glints. Between purrs. Custody, Bellatrix says, voice softened by the presence of a child who is not a child, a future that is not a hostage. If issue ever becomes more than an argument, I will teach them how to be dangerous without being cruel. Custody, Harry says. I will teach them how to be kind without being prey. They rise. The door closes. The night adjusts its weight. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Narcissa visits late with a bottle of something that tastes like the memory of victory and the price of it. Lucius drifts through the hallways like an expensive regret learning manners. Aquila, Kestrel, and Maris debrief with Hermione until parchment admits fatigue. Constraint will be unpopular, Kingsley says, dry as law. So will candor when it fails to flatter. Bellatrix smiles like a cathedral agreeing to host a scandal because the music will be worth it. Popularity is a tax we do not pay for policy. Harry looks at the framed oaths. We'll pay in receipts. Maris nods at the crescent at Bellatrix's throat. Already are. Kestrel's veil brightens at the edges. Trace echoes remain near the hinge door. The coin you jarred is cracking. Aquila closes the small book after writing 3 words. City learning us. Hermione leans back, satisfied and ferocious. Then we teach back. The room breathes. The house listens. The city tilts to make room for a future that insists on both law and love and refuses to choose cages. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Mini cliff. In the vault below, the ledger of choices deferred ripples. Candor brightens until the letters look forged. Constraint holds steady like a spine that learned to bend without breaking. The third line swells, still nameless, voice clearer. A child's timbre speaks through stone and oath and inkstone and bruise. Not yet. Not yet. Let me choose the moment. Above, the jarred coin splits along a hairline crack and exhales a thin, cold laugh that does not belong to it. A hinge door breathes in. A hinge door breathes out. The house counts. The city waits. Ellipsis. 6. The coin that hears. Dawn sketches a thin silver line across London and decides not to color inside it. The covenant hums in the bones of buildings that have learned to keep secrets politely. Newspapers arrive on stoops like domesticated rumors. The city reads itself with tea and tactical optimism. Harry stands at the townhouse window watching breath fog the glass, then fade. The ring is quiet, warm, alert. The brand at his sternum rests like a compass that knows north is a choice. Bellatrix crosses the room with a robe like spilled ink that changed its mind about making a mess. The crescent at her throat holds steady, receipt and warning. Today, she says, voice velvet over wire. We find the mouth behind the coin. Today, He agrees. We make it listen. Hermione arrives with a satchel that looks like it passed a bar exam. Ron with 2 coffees and a grin that argues well with mornings. Aquila calm as arithmetic. Kestrel precise as a heartbeat. Maris soft, sharp, and already counting how to keep bodies honest. The jarred coin cracked overnight, Hermione says. Hairline. Expanding on a rhythm that isn't ours. Someone is whispering through it like a flute made from nerve. Broker syndicate. Ron asks. Worse, Kestrel says, veil darkening a shade. A listener upstream. A market that hears promises before mouths make them. Bellatrix's smile is appreciative and cruel to boredom. A debt market that trades in unborn decisions. Charming. Harry nods once. We follow the whisper. We put it in a room that rewards honesty and finds arrogance. Hermione produces a schema etched on parchment like a musical score. Mirror room protocol, nested around the coin. We let it talk into a truth field. We do not answer questions. We state definitions. Aquila writes one line in the small book that always tells the truth with good handwriting. Do not chase prophecy. Corner grammar. Maris sets 2 vials and a charm like a bell on the table. If voices spike pain, we ring this. It turns agony into boredom. Kestrel carries the jar carefully, as one carries a dangerous kindness. Ready. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The mirror room waits, white stone and black glass and a silver table that thinks it is a lake. The jar sits at center. The verity splitter at Bellatrix's throat warms, opal brightening, crescent deepening by a shade. Harry places his palm near the first ring. The room remembers restraint. Listening, he says, steady. Fog blooms inside the jar like a secret practicing its posture. A sound threads the glass. Not a voice at first. A counting. 1, 1, 1. Then a word that has lost patience with its own caution. Accelerate. Bellatrix exhales as if helping a child shape its first syllable. Define. Issue. The coin breathes. Pending. Choose. Law. Lash. Either way, we collect. Hermione's quill waits, poised, refusing to dignify vagueness with ink. Collect what? She says, soft. Differentials, the coin answers. Regret converted to interest. Mercy taxed as inefficiency. Candor mispriced. Aquila's gaze sharpens. You are not a broker. You are an index. An ear, Kestrel adds. The coin that hears. The jar fog thickens, shapes into the outline of a ledger that thinks it is a cathedral. Columns of probabilities rise. Tiny numbers march like well-drilled lies. We hear hinges, the coin whispers. Doors deciding to open. Votes deciding to flinch. Futures. Negotiating with appetite. Bellatrix breathes onto the glass. The verity splitter shows twin readings side by side. Hearing is surveillance. Hearing is witness. One glows greedy. One glows stern. Witness, Harry says. Surveillance, Bellatrix says. The greedy reading wilts. The stern brightens. The coin trembles, insulted into honesty. Upstream, Hermione prompts. Where? Old bank, the coin stammers. Underwriting division that forgot it was mortal. A floor with no stairs and many accounts. Ledger house again, Ron mutters. They breed like bad ideas. Not exactly, Kestrel corrects. Older than the rooftop desk. A root. Maris taps the charm bell once. The air flattens any sharp that might become pain. The coin steadies. Who built you? Harry asks. Not a who, the coin replies. A hunger taught to spell. Bellatrix's smile is fierce. Then we teach it grammar. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They go to the places where money pretends to be shy. Ledger House admits them with the counterfeit grace of institutions that cannot afford to be rude to history. Aurors ring corridors like parentheses that require the sentence to behave. Kingsley's presence moves paperwork in rooms he is not in. Aquila leads with pace that suggests courtesy and expects compliance. Kestrel reads shadows and finds the lie inside the light. Maris reads heart rates and opens vials with hands that do not shake. Hermione translates architecture into law. Ron keeps count of doors that think they're clever and tells a joke to each so they don't try anything. The floor with no stairs is a rumor until Bellatrix puts her hand on a wall and says hello like a wolf saying grace. Stone shifts. A seam appears. A hinge sighs. A door opens that was always there for those who knew consent is a key and a password. Inside, a room dressed in numbers. Mirrors, ledgers, clocks, coins in cages, coins out of cages, a table with a cloth that might be an unrolled contract. At the far end, a woman without a crown and with the posture of someone who eats pressure for breakfast and finds it bland. Hair pinned practical. Eyes that price. Welcome to underwriting, she says. You brought law and knives. How quaint. Quaint is a word bureaucracy uses when it has lost the argument, Hermione says, pleasant. Bellatrix steps forward, verity splitter bright, throat honest. We brought a mirror. Harry speaks as if explaining weather to a roof that has opinions. We know the coin hears. We want the mouth to listen. The woman smiles like paper refusing to tear. I am the auditor, she says. I count the cost of futures. I price mercy at full market value. Then your market is immoral, Aquila replies. It is amoral, the auditor corrects. Immorality is expensive and therefore infrequent. Kestrel's veil blooms glyphs that settle into a net without announcing themselves a net. Amorality is a confession, they murmur. Maris sets the charm bell on a corner of the table. If anyone screams, it will sound like yawning. Ron leans against a column that tries to be haughty and becomes helpful instead. Let's see the books, then. The auditor gestures. Ledgers open. Numbers breathe. Pictures form. Children that might be. Cities that might survive. Laws that might devour. The room shifts like a chessboard deciding to allow checkmates after all. Bellatrix breathes onto a mirror. Verity splitter doubles the images. Candor priced as cruelty. Candor priced as courage. Constraint priced as control. Constraint priced as discipline. The wrong halves blush when seen. The right halves grow teeth and sing. Do you sell the wrong halves? Harry asks. The auditor does not flinch. We sell what is bought. People buy because you flood the market with flavored fear, Hermione says. Fear is free, the auditor counters. We monetize it ethically by keeping our hands clean. Bellatrix's smile is a knife deciding to test romance. Clean hands in dirty work are a kink, not a virtue. Aquila writes another line. We will make fear expensive. Kestrel steps forward. Underwriting must write under something. Under what do you write? The auditor glances at the ceiling. Under the assumption that prophecy is simply risk expressed in poetry. Harry considers. Then rewrite your poem. Maris taps the bell. Boredom spreads like an anesthetic through any syntax that thinks it can eat a scream. The numbers settle. Terms, Kingsley says from the doorway, voice that convinces budgets to stop lying. You cease trading futures of consent-based covenants. You surrender devices that listen without leave. You contribute your models to public oversight. The auditor weighs the weight. In exchange, your industry lives, Bellatrix says. You learn to price courage properly. Or, Harry adds, we make you a museum. A tiny smile that has never been seen in this room before attempts to exist on the auditor's mouth. It succeeds briefly. Agreed, she says. Conditional. Hermione raises a quill. State your condition. The child's choice, the auditor says. If your metaphysical issue resolves into a person, the market demands one right. No, Bellatrix says, already smiling. Hear it, Aquila advises, because good fences know when to install gates. A right, the auditor continues, patient. To bid nothing. To abstain. To be unpriced. Silence lands. It likes what it hears. Harry nods. We enshrine it. Bellatrix tilts her head. With teeth. Kestrel writes a sigil in air that files itself. Maris relaxes her shoulders by a millimeter. Ron exhales the kind of sound pubs make at last call when nobody has to fight. The auditor closes one ledger and opens another. A coin inside its cage stops pretending to sleep. It listens. The room remembers what rooms are for. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Back in the mirror room, the jarred coin hums like a mouth practicing. The verity splitter gleams. Hermione's parchment waits. Aquila stands with the posture of a signed agreement. Kestrel with the patience of a sealed vault. Maris with the eye of a midwife who has delivered law and babies and prefers the babies. Declaration, Harry says. The market may not price consent. Amendment, Bellatrix adds. The market may not price the child's choice. Codicil, Hermione finishes. Any attempt to monetize abstention or refusal triggers contempt, seizure, and public laughter. The coin rattles, then settles. Noted, it whispers. Pivot. We sell time. Aquila smiles slightly. Time is ours. Then we buy your next minute, the coin breathes, almost playful. Bellatrix leans close. We already spent it. The jar fog dissipates like a coward at noon. The crack holds. The coin is quieter. Not safe. Better. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They take a walk through a city that has learned to say the words out loud. Custody. Candor. Constraint. The oaths hang in shop windows. Now, printed on paper that blushes when lied to. Children tug at sleeves and ask definitions. Parents answer and get some wrong and correct themselves in public, which is how culture happens. A woman in Nocturne argues that constraint is just control with lipstick. Bellatrix laughs and says lipstick is a choice. A man in Diagon weeps at the word custody because the old kind broke him. Harry listens until the listening turns back into a spine. Hermione runs workshops where words are taught to bite the right ankles. Ron teaches a policeman to tell a joke to a law so it doesn't think it's the only one in the room with power. Aquila mediates a dispute between two shopkeepers who both think the other is an algorithm. Kestrel shames a mirror that tries to act like a prophet. Maris shows three teenagers how to breathe past a panic that was sold to them at a discount. A coin rolls across a cobble and stops at Bellatrix's boot. She does not pick it up. Consent, she asks. No, the coin says, surprised by its own voice. Then stay, Harry answers. It does. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Night in the townhouse smells like paper that mattered and tea that did its job. The inkstone rests satisfied and dangerous. The framed oaths look back as if reading the room for hypocrisy. The ring hums. The brand cools. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Confession, Bellatrix says. I enjoyed negotiating with the auditor. It is a thrill to find a mind worth bruising. Confession, Harry replies. I almost liked her. That worries me appropriately. They do not lift the knife. Plan, Bellatrix says. We find the door that grew a hinge without asking. Plan, Harry echoes. We write a sign above it that says private property of consent. Between warms, approving. They rise into a house that rests like a satisfied animal. The city outside exhales into a night that wants to be forgiven and earns it by trying. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The watch circle takes turns sleeping. Hermione dreams of clauses that arrive already spelled correctly. Ron dreams of a bar tab paid in apologies and a stool that keeps a seat for him when he is brave. Aquila dreams in ledgers that balance. Kestrel dreams of a net that loves its own fairness. Maris dreams of steady hands. Bellatrix does not dream much. When she does, it is of windows she opens and closes on purpose. Harry dreams of a knife on a table that never lifts without both their hands and the knife never needing to cut. The coin in the jar dreams of silence. It likes it more than it expected. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mini cliff. Deep beneath House Black's vault, the ledger of choices deferred stirs. Candor shines steady, readable at a distance. Constraint arches its back like a cat deciding whether to leap. The third line swells, unnamed, voice clear and small and unsentimental. I hear you. I do not consent to being sold. I will arrive when I choose. In a corridor 3 levels up, the hinge door opens a hair on its own, then closes, as if breathing for practice. In the jar, the coin's crack widens to a fine smile and then stops, afraid of its own relief. Ellipsis. ... 7. Law or lash. Morning hangs pale over London like a verdict not yet pronounced. The Covenant hums in the plaster and pipes, tuned to the city's breath. Headlines attempt to choreograph fear and trip over new definitions pinned to notice boards and pub walls. Custody. Candor. Constraint. Harry ties his laces with care that looks like ritual and is discipline. ... The ring is warm. The brand at his sternum is quiet as a reliable compass. Bellatrix leans in the doorway, robe-like liquid shadow, crescent at her throat an honest bruise that refuses to fade for liars. Her smile is a thin blade sheathed in delight. Today, she says. The collector brings a prophecy variant. Today, he answers. We make prophecy do paperwork. Hermione enters with a folio and a look that could shame a bureaucracy into a conscience. Ron brings coffee and a grin that remembers last night's joke and plans to reuse it in a better key. Aquila, Kestrel, and Maris arrive with the quiet gravity of people who have rehearsed crisis until it became choreography. The Ministry will attempt a technical invalidation again, Hermione says. Different angle. A procedural chokehold. Lash hidden inside law, Aquila notes, writing the phrase with neat contempt. The Collector asked for a hearing, Kestrel adds. He wants his prophecy on record. Or his story, Maris says. Prophecies are often stories with entitlement issues. Bellatrix's eyes glitter. We invite him. We charge admission in definitions. Harry nods. Mirror room first. Then the public floor. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The mirror room holds a jar quiet as a held breath. The cracked coin lies inside like a conscience learning to enjoy silence. The verity splitter warms on Bellatrix's throat, honest crescent a shade darker, opal ready. Harry places his palm near the ring. Restraint reminds the room how to behave. Kestrel opens a line. The Collector steps through the glass with the fragile arrogance of someone who recently decided to prefer survival. Younger than his competence. Older than his appetite. Ledger in hand, coinless. Keystone, he says. Laughing witch. Collector, Bellatrix replies. Begin your aria. He smiles like a lock that would enjoy being picked by the right thief. Prophecy variant, he says. 2 lines. The Keystone marriage collapses either by Mercy dying or by Joy learning restraint. Hermione's quill hovers. Define, collapses. Fails to hold the city's truce, the Collector answers. Catalyzes a consensus for violence. Define, Mercy dying, Aquila requests. Mercy converted into contempt, he says. A kindness that stops being brave. Define, Joy learning restraint, Kestrel presses. Joy that ceases to be feral, he says. Becomes domesticated. Loses teeth. Bellatrix laughs softly, delighted and offended. Someone told on me to a riddle. Harry's mouth moves like a door considering whether to be a smile. Your variant frames a false dichotomy, he says. It ignores consent. The verity splitter doubles the variant in glass. In one reading, Joy caged. In the other, Joy self-bridled. In one, Mercy dead. In the other, Mercy disciplined. The wrong halves blush. The right halves sharpen. Consent breaks the prophecy, Hermione says. By inserting a hinge the verse did not price. The Collector looks at the doubled lines and sees, perhaps for the first time, a poem as a negotiable instrument. So you intend to keep Mercy brave and Joy sharp, he murmurs. We intend to keep them in dialogue, Bellatrix purrs. Maris taps the charm bell once. Any pain that considered entering the room becomes slightly bored with itself. Public floor, Harry says. You speak. We define. The Collector inclines. I will try not to enjoy myself. Do, Bellatrix says. We charge extra for guilt. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Hearing. Chamber C is full in the way rooms get full when a city wants to be reassured and entertained and forgiven for needing both. Kingsley stands at the lectern and balances truth against appetite with a scale he forged from patience. The watch circle flanks like punctuation that forces a sentence to make sense. Reporters glitter, preening for the idea of objectivity. The floor recognizes the citizen stakeholder known as the Collector, Kingsley says, tone that convinces teeth to unclench. The Collector steps forward and places his ledger on the table like a villain offering flowers because he has finally read the end of the book. There exists a prophecy variant, he begins, clear. It says your keystone collapses either when Mercy dies or when Joy learns restraint. A murmur rolls, then settles when Harry lifts a hand with the authority of someone who learned to say less, better. We reject the premise, he says. We reject prophecies that pretend consent does not exist. Bellatrix leans into the room with a smile that turns attention into a stage and does not apologize for it. Joy can learn restraint without losing teeth, she says. Mercy can learn discipline without losing courage. This, we name not collapse. We name adulthood. Hermione holds up a parchment. Definitions filed, she says. Consent is prime. Joy is feral, disciplined, unowned. Mercy is brave, bounded, incorruptible. Aquila writes the hearing's spine into a small book, false dichotomy refused. Kestrel tilts the veil so reflections cannot lie. Maris watches faces for the moment understanding becomes choice. Rita Skeeter tilts her head, hunting a bite worth serving. And if Mercy dies, she asks. If Joy goes to finishing school and returns to Claude. Harry's voice is steady enough to make a balcony lean closer. Then we will have failed. And we will repair in public. Bellatrix's voice purrs with a blade hidden under velvet. If my joy is ever domesticated, I will resign my rings before I let a leash touch a throat. Silence falls hard and then stands up straighter. Kingsley nods once, letting the line settle into the city's ledger. Proceed, he says to the collector. The collector breathes, searching for a role that can accommodate contrition without surrendering spine. My industry tried to sell fear as destiny, he says. We pivot to selling time as patience. We will publish models open to public insult. Accepted, Hermione says dryly. Insult is our cheapest regulatory tool. Laughter breaks tension at a humane pressure. The mood moves from appetite to appetite with manners. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. By late afternoon, the motion to invalidate by technicality reappears in committee like a hydra with better grooming. Its teeth are precedent and process. Its breath smells like boredom weaponized. It whispers that unknowns are dangerous and should be caged for safety's sake. Hermione steps into the committee room and drops grammar on the table like a guillotine that has developed a sense of humor. No secret hearings about consent, she says. No ex-parte whispers around children who do not exist. No redefining discipline as control in footnotes. Aquila stands at the door and makes leaving look unfashionable. Kestrel occupies the room's reflections until they behave. Maris sets a glass of water by a clerk whose hands shake from proximity to cowardice. Kingsley watches, lets the motion believe in itself, and then removes the chair from beneath it at exactly the right second. Harry offers 4 sentences that could be carved into lintels. Without embarrassing the stone. Law protects autonomy, he says. Autonomy honors law. Mercy is brave. Joy is sharp. Bellatrix adds 1 sentence a cathedral could envy. Any motion that forgets those 4 will find itself very lonely. The motion fails by a margin that looks accidental and was not. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Back at the townhouse, Narcissa arrives with a ledger that is not for sale and a bottle that tastes like a compromise nobody regretted in public. Lucius follows, immaculate, tragic, and faintly amused by his own survival. House Black offers an elegant technicality, Narcissa says. Redefine fidelity. Hermione's eyebrows lift. Legally. Dual loyalty, Narcissa says. To law and spouse. We alternate primacy. We formalize it. Aquila writes dual loyalty with calm relish. Kestrel hums a pattern that suggests this knot will not snarl. Maris watches Bellatrix closely. Bellatrix's smile is a sin wearing a halo for fashion. I adore this. It makes daring polite. Harry considers, then nods. We codify it. 2 oaths that take turns going first. Filed, Hermione says, already writing. Public. Enforceable. Funny, if read drunk. Lucius looks almost proud and will deny it under oath. House Black tolerates wit when it is expensive. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Hermione sets a separate folio on the table with a reverence that means danger tamed and not dead. Fail safe, she says. A reversible knot. If the Covenant tries to eat your wills, this will make it vomit. Aquila and Kestrel lean in professionally. Maris leans in humanly. Bellatrix leans in like a cat admiring a mousetrap that finally respects her prey. Harry leans in because he will try anything that preserves autonomy without pretending the cost is free. It threads through 7 lots, Hermione explains. Triggers only when compulsion appears. Requires both of you to pull. Single user activation null. Consent or nothing, Bellatrix says, satisfied. Consent or nothing, Harry echoes. The knot gleams. The ring warms. The brand at his sternum feels it and approves. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Night draws a circle around the city and calls it intimacy. The watch circle disperses to sleep in shifts and guard in dreams. The inkstone rests like a beast that has eaten lies and wants dessert. The framed oaths hold the room to account with simple words and sharp edges. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Joy, Bellatrix says, voice frank. I will not let you be domesticated. Mercy, Harry answers, voice steady. I will not let you be sentimental. They do not lift the knife. Confession, Bellatrix says. When I threaten a bureaucrat with poetry, I feel holy. Confession, Harry replies. When I let a bully tire himself out against a wall of kindness, I feel violent. They let the room have these two truths. It is fed. Plan, Bellatrix says. We bring the hinge door into light. Plan, Harry echoes. We make the city witness. Between warms, pleased. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The ministry schedules a plenary address because sometimes a city needs a sermon that isn't a sermon. Kingsley introduces with the patience of a man aware that eloquence is not policy but sometimes helps policy survive its enemies. The watch circle lines the stage like commas. Reporters load their nouns. Harry steps forward first. The marriage was a truce, he says. It became a law. It is becoming a culture. We will fail in repair in public. Bellatrix steps into the same air and turns it a degree sharper. Joy will not be declawed, she says. Mercy will not be domesticated. Consent will not be priced. Children, if any, will not be optimized. Hermione holds up a parchment that glows like a spell and is only grammar. Dual loyalty filed, she says. Fail-safe registered. Public laughter authorized for misuse of the word, safety. Aquila writes a single sentence that should be dull and isn't. Oversight is companionship. Kestrel adjusts the lights so mirrors behave. Maris watches breath become courage in 100 throats. Ron says a line that makes a clerk snort in the middle of being scared, and the clerk forgives himself for living. Rita asks the question the market would ask if it were honest. What if the child chooses lash? Silence arrives like a teacher. Harry meets it. Then we stand between lash and law until choice ripens. Bellatrix smiles a promise dangerous to boredom. And we teach the lash to love consent or die of embarrassment. The city laughs like a cathedral that finally installed good acoustics. The market flinches in its sleep. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. A corridor afterward is quieter than policy. The collector waits by a window, ledger closed, hands empty. He looks less like a villain and more like a person good at the wrong things. I resigned, he says. I will build a fund that invests in patients. Build clinics, Maris suggests. With the profits. Build a stage, Ron says. For jokes that make laws nervous. Build an audit of your own appetites, Aquila adds. Build a doctrine of refusal, Kestrel says. Build a spine, Hermione finishes, kind. The collector nods as if assembling permission into a tool. Keystone, he says to Harry. Laughing witch, he says to Bellatrix. Good hunting. Bellatrix's smile is almost friendly and refuses to apologize for the almost. Harry offers a nod that can be read three ways and all of them decent. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They return to the townhouse in a night that smells like clean chalk and worn wood. The inkstone waits. The oaths look good in low light. The ring hums. The brand cools. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Fear audit, Harry says. What are we most afraid of tonight? Being boring, Bellatrix says without hesitation. Being cruel without noticing, he answers. They let the room have those two. It purrs. Resolve, Bellatrix says. If I ever ask for domestication, refuse me. Resolve, Harry replies. If I ever ask for sentimentality, refuse me. They do not lift the knife. The knife glints like a promise that loves being kept. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mini cliff. Under London, the hinge door opens wide enough to admit a whisper. In the vault below House Black, the ledger of choices deferred brightens. Candor burns clean. Constraint stands tall. The third line, still unnamed, speaks again, voice small and immovable. I reserve the right to refuse your prophecy. In the coin jar, the crack does not widen, but a new hairline appears like a smile learning restraint. In a committee room no one locked because they trusted habit, emotion wakes on its own and begins to write itself into existence with a quill that isn't holding ink. Ellipsis. ... 8, 7 lots. Dawn walks in on London like a magistrate with warm hands and cold eyes. The Covenant hums beneath doors and along lintels, a steady rhythm that refuses panic and invites preparation. Headlines rehearse yesterday's arguments and forget that definitions have teeth now. Custody. Candor. Constraint. Harry buttons his shirt with the precision of a man who respects ritual as discipline, not superstition. The ring is warm, companionable. The brand at his sternum rests, a star that points to choices rather than roots. Bellatrix leans in the doorway, ink-dark robe a decision, crescent at her throat a receipt written by truth. Her smile is the sound a knife makes when it decides to be a mirror. Today, she says. 7 lots. Today, he answers. Judgment by what we meant and what we did, not what we pretend. Hermione arrives with a folio that smells like law taught to sing. Ron with coffee and an optimism that survived both war and bureaucracy. Aquila steady as arithmetic. Kestrel precise as a sealed vault. Maris soft and sharp, a guardian of breath. The adjudication mechanism has activated, Hermione says. 7 tests. Intent, consequence, equity, consent, lineage, debt, restitution. Public, witnessed, binding. Aquila writes the list like a spine in the small book that refuses to lie. Kestrel's veil blooms glyphs that mean readiness without bravado. Maris opens her kit and lays out tools in a line that looks like a lullaby. Bellatrix tilts her head, amused and attentive. We win 4, we lose 2, one hangs undecided. Let us choose our losses with taste. Harry nods. And earn the undecided on purpose. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The Hall of Lots stands beneath the ministry the way a conscience stands behind a politician, old, patient, not invited, indispensable. Stone arches carry weight without complaint. 7 circles are inscribed into the floor, each with a sigil that tastes of its name. Benches rise in tiers. Witnesses file in, aurors, healers, clerks, goblins with the courtesy of predators, witches with memories, wizards with opinions, portraits that intend to behave. Kingsley presides with dignity that makes silence useful. The advocate appears masked and voiceless and somehow audible. 7 lots, the voice intones. Intent, consequence, equity, consent, lineage, debt, restitution. House Potter Black stands. Harry and Bellatrix step into the first circle together. The ring hums. Between tilts open in the mind by a patient inch. The knife on the table shines and does not lift. Lot 1, intent, the hall declares. The circle becomes a corridor of mirrors that refuse faces and show only verbs. Harry's mirrors replay choices that tasted like weather, refusals to strike that guarded futures, strikes chosen when futures refused to be guarded otherwise, a boy's hunger for vengeance turned into a man's choke on it. Bellatrix's mirrors replay precision where cruelty could have been laziness, laughter held back when the world confused honesty for harm, a woman who once hunted pain learning to hunt consequences. The hall hums. Intent weighed. A scribe inscribes a sigil above the arches. Win. Lot 2, consequence, the hall declares. Stairs descend, each step labeled with a cost, each landing demanding a story with receipts. Harry names harm he caused by choosing mercy at the wrong moment and harm he avoided by choosing force at the right one. Bellatrix names collateral damage she refused to accept and the habits she broke to prevent it from becoming convenient. The hall listens for evasion and hears none it respects. The sigil above flickers. Win. Lot 3, equity, the hall declares. A scale manifests, one side piled with apologies, the other with laws. They remove apologies that pretended to be statutes and add laws that behave like apologies delivered on time. The beam steadies at a height that will satisfy no zealot and serve many citizens. The sigil brightens. Win. Lot 4, consent, the hall declares. The circle empties of spectacle and waits. Harry and Bellatrix wait with it. The room learns what answer looks like when phrased as patience. The sigil glows with a quiet heat. Win. Lot 5, lineage, the hall declares. Faces gather, not ghosts, but claims, a family tree unrolled into a parliament. The black line is a stern river unwilling to apologize and newly eager to be forgiven correctly. The Potter line is a stubborn hedge grown around a cottage that kept more people alive than it had rooms for. The faces argue jurisdiction. Bellatrix speaks first. We inherit blades, not chains. Harry speaks next. We honor the dead by not letting them manage the living. The hall nods in the way stone nods, by not falling. The sigil above steadies without brightening. Loss. Bellatrix's smile shows the satisfaction of choosing a battlefield where loss is education. Harry places his palm near hers without touching, a companionship that feeds lineage the correct diet. Lot 6, debt, the hall declares. Scrolls unroll across the circle like weather maps of promises. Names demand, names pled, names regret. They burn debts written by liars and sign debts owed to those who were brave when they were not watching. A handful remain, old, ugly, righteous. One is a debt owed to a boy who fell through a veil while a cousin laughed. Bellatrix lifts her hands empty. I can't pay that bill to him, she says. I will pay it to 1,000 other boys and count interest as obligation, not virtue. The hall respects debt paid in future labor. The sigil dims, then lifts halfway. Loss. Harry's jaw is the answer to a question that should not be asked twice. He nods. They take the loss like a vow. Lot 7, restitution, the hall declares. A bowl appears with cracks that beg for golden patience. They melt pride and pour carefully. The bowl holds. The hall warms. The sigil above flickers, brightens, then steadies. Win. 4 sigils glow, 2 hold in honorable dimness, 1 remains unlit, an empty place, a question reserved. Undecided binds forward, the advocate says. Verdict deferred to the issue. The hall's breath changes. A murmur travels, not scandal, not relief, recognition. The third line in the vault's ledger without a name worships and resents the attention and hides better. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Witnesses file their faces back into themselves. Kingsley's shoulders loosen a measure. Hermione writes. Aquila writes. Kestrel stands exactly where Shadow pretends to be law and reminds it of jurisdiction. Maris watches the room move through adrenaline into thoughtfulness without bleeding. Rita Skeeter is almost moved and writes 2 adjectives she will edit to 1. Goblins count without malice and find themselves amused. Portraits whisper and are shushed by frames that remember worse. Bellatrix stands in the circle and rolls her shoulders like a dancer choosing a fight with gravity. 2 losses, she says, pleased. Correct ones. Harry looks up at the undecided place in the arch. We earned a hinge. Use it, Hermione murmurs. Don't worship it. Aquila underlines the word hinge. Kestrel breathes like a vault that likes its owners. Maris offers water and gets a grin as thanks from a woman who rarely performs that trick. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The corridor outside the hall is quiet in the way corridors get quiet when decisions exhausted vanity. Narcissa waits with a small box and an expression that blends affection and audit. Lucius polishes his silence into style. A hedge, Narcissa says, handing the box to Harry. Inside, a compact of powdered warding, black as a moonless contract. For the hinge you have earned, she says. Dust it while it is still yours. Bellatrix's smile sharpens into something toothy and grateful. Sister, she says, you remain the better sin. Lucius bows by less than the width of a coin. House Black abhors deferment without collateral, he murmurs. Hermione's laugh is quietly dangerous. Collateral is consent. Aquila slides the compact into a pocket where it cannot be stolen by narrative. Kestrel tilts the veil in approval. Maris watches the crescent at Bellatrix's throat, then the compact, then Harry's hands, and relaxes her jaw by 1 muscle. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. They return to the townhouse to a table that expects grammar and gives tea. The framed oaths look good under daylight that refuses flattery. The inkstone dozes like a well-fed beast. The ring hums. The brand at Harry's sternum is a steady cool. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Say the losses, Harry says. Lineage, Bellatrix answers. We refused both sentimentality and nostalgia. We were punished correctly. Debt, Harry says. We promised future payments. That is honest. That has teeth. They do not lift the knife. Say the hinge, Bellatrix continues. The undecided reserved for the issue. Say what we will not allow, Harry answers. Anybody to claim it before it is claimed by the one who can own it. Between warms. The knife glints. The room stores the answer where it can be found when fright lies. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The watch circle debriefs with the relief of professionals whose plan survived contact with ritual. Aquila's notes are a school for future adjudications. Kestrel draws a neat diagram of the hall's appetite. Maris checks everyone's hands for tremor and gives out fruit as if it were talisman and medicine. Hermione files. Kingsley signs. Ron tells a story about a stamp that once bit him and makes 3 clerks laugh in a way that will protect them later. Next, Hermione says, we anticipate the market's countermove. Rename our losses as invitations, Aquila suggests. Collect interest in public, Kestrel adds. Feed the hinge minutes instead of drama, Maris says. Bellatrix considers, then grins. Let us be tedious debate. Harry nods. And obvious to the right witnesses. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Afternoon brings a rumor to Diagon and Nocturne that 7 lots have made Potter black saints or sinners depending on the teller's appetite. Children point at the framed oaths and spell the words like charms. Shopkeepers move coins across counters with new respect for minutes. An argument outside flourish and blots about constraint does not end in hexes and therefore counts as civilization. A brass plaque appears on the Hall of Lot's door as if the building had a sense of humor. It reads, "Do not pray here for victories you have not earned." Rita quotes it verbatim. The prophet prints it without adjectives. On a roof, a discarded coin's crack deepens by a hair and then stops like someone learning restraint. In the underwriting floor, the auditor stares at models adjusted for consent and experiences the unfamiliar taste of pride that does not demand applause. A gray figure from the old syndicate writes a resignation and keeps the copy. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Evening falls with the posture of a verdict delivered without gloating. The hinge door the city grew breathes in. Breathes out. The new powder Narcissa gifted sits in Aquila's pocket like a yes that refuses theft. The unsolved thread leads downward. They go. The corridor to the hinge is a new habit learning manners. Lights do not flicker. Floors do not sigh. Doors do not try to be clever. The hinge itself is a bright thought in wood. Bellatrix touches it with a fingertip and the verity splitter gleams, honest crescent attentive. Harry dusts the seam with warding powder and the line becomes visible like a promise drawn in ink. Ownership, he says. Consent, she says. The hinge accepts both. The door opens into a room that exists because the city agreed to store a question. The space is simple. A table, a chair, a window that looks into no current street and every possible one. On the table, a ledger of choices deferred lies open to a page that recognizes them. Candor bright. Constraint steady. The third line still unnamed, not coy, simply sovereign. Harry does not step forward. Bellatrix does not speak. They stand in the doorway and let the room decide if it wishes to be watched. Minutes pass and for once the market cannot sell them. The page ripples once. A line of ink writes itself in a clear hand neither of them owns. Not yet. Bellatrix laughs softly, delighted by refusal. A spine, she says. Harry smiles the smile of a man who enjoys losing to a good refusal. A future. They close the door with the kind of respect that makes hinges loyal. The powder glows faint along the seam. The hinge breathes easier. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Back at the townhouse, Narcissa has sent supper and a note that reads, "Pride can be saved for dessert if you learn to eat humility hot." Lucius adds a postscript that claims authorship of the line and is lying elegantly. Hermione rewrites 2 clauses with fewer commas and more consequences. Kingsley drafts a speech that will be remembered because it refused to flatter. Aquila files. Kestrel rests. Maris checks the bruising at Bellatrix's throat and applies a salve that smells like honesty and mint. Bellatrix tilts her head to give access and grins when the salve stings a little. Receipts, she says. Harry looks at the framed oaths and thinks they look less like rules and more like promises they have no intention of breaking unless someone's life insists. The ring hums. The brand is cool. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Review the lots, Harry says. Intent, consequence, equity, consent, ours, Bellatrix answers. Lineage, debt, correct losses. Restitution, one because we learned to melt pride. Undecided, he says. Bound to the issue. Guard it from poets and profiteers, she replies. They do not lift the knife. The room stores the list as a ward. Fear audit, Harry says. What frightens us now? Becoming respectful to boredom, Bellatrix says without blinking. Confusing patience with passivity, he answers. They let the room have both. It purrs. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. The watch circle rotates out. The city learns to sleep without checking the locks twice. The Hall of Lots dims without sulking. The underwriting floor files its reports with an honesty that will hurt revenue and save faces. A discarded coin dreams of quiet. Like a sinner dreams of soup. On a rooftop, a figure lowers a spyglass of dragonbone and ink and does not smile. The ledger on their knee breathes once, then refuses to. A page titled Cull curls in on itself and blackens at the edges. Another page titled Candor smooths. Constraint adds a footnote that refuses to be ignored. In a basement, a gray figure writes, I resign. Then writes, I volunteer to build clinics. Then does not cross it out. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mini cliff. The hall of lots empties to stone an echo and the faint aftertaste of truth. In the vault beneath House Black, the ledger of choices deferred turns a page on its own. The unnamed line inks a sentence with the authority of someone who is owed autonomy. If you price me, I will break your market. On the hinge door's seam, the warding powder brightens briefly and then fades as if it had nodded. In a committee room that forgot to be locked, a new motion knocks from the inside, shy, principled, inconvenient. It writes its first word without a hand to guide it. Consent. Ellipsis. ... 9. Breaking even. Dawn lays a pale coin on London's roofs and asks the city what it wants to buy today. The Covenant hums steady along bricks and beams, tuned to breath rather than noise. Headlines arrive with fewer teeth and better grammar. Custody. Candor. Constraint. Harry knots his tie with the grace of a habit that refuses superstition and loves discipline. The ring is warm, companionable. The star at his sternum rests like a compass that points to choices, not orders. Bellatrix leans in the doorway, ink dark silk a decision, crescent at her throat a receipt truth keeps signing. Her smile is the sound steel makes when it decides to be kind without asking for applause. Today, she says, we redefine fidelity. Today, he answers, we pay debts forward, not backward. Hermione enters with a folio that smells like victory that refused to gloat. Ron with coffee and a grin that files bureaucracy down to size. Aquila, Kestrel, and Maris arrive with quiet that carries authority. Draft complete, Hermione says. Dual loyalty. Spouse-in-law trade primacy on schedule and by need. A reversible knot threads the covenant, compulsion triggers reversal only by both hands. Definitions cleave to consent. Aquila writes a single sentence in the small book with letters that do not lie. Fidelity equals two devotions that refuse to cannibalize. Kestrel's veil warms, glyphs surfacing like fish in clear water. The knot is clean. Maris sets salve and sugar on the table, guardian of bruise and breath. You'll need both. Bellatrix lifts the Verity splitter on its chain, opal catching morning, crescent darker by a shade that looks like pride earned. Let us make vows behave. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The ministry's grand chamber has the architecture of certainty and the acoustics of doubt. Benches rise in amphitheater rings. Portraits look interested in behaving. Goblins occupy a row with courteous predation. Reporters glitter in nests of adjectives. Kingsley presides like a judge who remembers being a field medic. Motion, Hermione declares, voice turned to bell and blade. Redefine fidelity in covenant law as dual loyalty, to spouse and to law. Primacy alternates by circumstance or schedule. Consent anchors. Compulsion voids. Fail-safe not registered. A murmur like whether learning a new instrument moves through the room. An elder witch with hair like lamp smoke stands. And when loyalties conflict, she asks, which first? Neither devours, Aquila. Answers, calm. Context names primacy. Next time, it trades. Receipts, Bellatrix adds, smiling. We bruise for our choices. We do not cosplay sainthood. Harry steps forward, voice steady enough to make stone listen. Fidelity is not obedience, he says. It is endurance. To love and to law. When they argue, we refuse to pretend the argument is treason. Kestrel tilts the veil so reflections cannot lie. Maris watches pulse and breath ripple through the benches and notes where courage catches. Ron coughs at just the right moment and a clerk remembers to unclench a jaw. Rita Skeeter rises, pen like a poised bee. And when the covenant itself tries to eat your wills, she asks. Hermione lays the folio flat. Reversible knot, she says. Pulled by both. Compulsion reverses. Documentation public. Bellatrix touches the crescent at her throat. Receipts, she says, delighted. The vote passes by a margin that looks inevitable now that the work is done. The room exhales. The portraits preen in relief. The goblins smirk with professional satisfaction at elegant contracts. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Narcissa arrives at the townhouse with a gift wrapped in understatement. Lucius follows like an expensive punctuation mark that adds meaning whether invited or not. House Black brings an old toy taught new manners, Narcissa says. A loyalty dial. Inside the velvet lies a small disc of obsidian etched with two sigils, law and spouse. Between them, a groove holds a sliver of starlight that can slide left or right, never vanish. Wear it when decisions require choreography, she says. Move the light by consent, not whim. Hermione studies the disc with a scholar's suspicion that survives even beauty. It records each shift. It will embarrass fools who try to lie about order. Bellatrix laughs, low. I adore technology that gossips only with truth. Harry weighs the disc, then sets it between them on the table like a pet he refuses to let starve. We'll set it together. Aquila notes, choreography, not hierarchy. Kestrel hums approval in a key that shames self-importance. Maris watches the weight leave two sets of shoulders by a degree money cannot buy. Lucius clears his throat like a minor aria. House Black recognizes dual loyalty as fashionably lethal, he purrs. We approve. Narcissa kisses Bellatrix's cheek with the exact pressure required to signal pride and caution. Spend responsibly. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. The underwriting floor smells different, less panic, more ink that did its job. The auditor stands with models opened like windows. Numbers breathe. They do not pant. We have priced patience, she says, almost smiling. It is profitable enough. Good, Harry answers. Profit can live if it stops killing. Bellatrix paces the mirrors like a fencing master teaching reflections to mind their footwork. Your models still assume the child will be optimized, she says. Erase that. We did, the auditor replies. We used abstention as a primary variable. Kestrel traces glyphs that validate the erasure. Aquila jots a line that turns into policy on contact with air. Maris picks up a report titled Mercy costs more and writes in the margin worth it. Hermione slides across a slim document. Public audit of your appetite, she says. Quarterly. We bring jokes. The auditor's smile fully happens for the first time in public. We will deserve them, she says. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Nocturne at Twilight is a stage that refuses rehearsal. Lanterns turn alleys into vertical sentences. A heckler outside a wand shop tries to sell the old lie that constraint is just control with lipstick. Bellatrix buys the lie for a sickle and tears it in half gently. Constraint is self-mastery, she says. Control is theft. Harry listens to a man whose hands shake with the memory of a law that loved cages more than safety. We change the locks, he says. You keep the key. Hermione hosts a short, rude seminar about words that bite the wrong ankles. Ron tells a story that ends with a shopkeeper forgiving himself for being wrong and the crowd claps because they aren't used to audience participation during ethics. Aquila mediates a quarrel between cousins and both leave embarrassed and undefeated. Kestrel shames a mirror into returning stolen faces. Maris patches a scraped knee and 3 egos with equal skill. A child points at the framed oaths in a window and asks a question too loud. What if I don't want to be brave? Bellatrix kneels to eye level, smile sharp, voice soft. Then you will be gentle, she says. Both are valuable. Both require practice. Harry adds, calm. And both are allowed to rest. The child nods with the gravity of a judge and buys a sweet with coins that ring like yes. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Back in the mirror room, Hermione places a slim box on the silver table. The reversible knot, she says. Finished. Threaded through 7 lots. Armed by consent. Recorded in public. Bellatrix opens the box and the knot gleams like a small constellation taught manners. The verity splitter warms, the crescent at her throat deepens, honest. Harry sets his palm near and the ring hums in a chord that recognizes refuge. They do not pull. Kestrel watches reflections for any hint of appetite where protection should sit. Aquila writes, antidote installed. Maris smiles the way a midwife smiles when a difficult birth breathes evenly. Test, Hermione says. Verbal only. Consent, Harry says. Consent, Bellatrix says. The knot brightens, then dims. It understands. Rita appears in the doorway with a question too polished to be idle. What if only one of you wishes to undo a compulsion? Then it doesn't undo, Harry answers. We stand. And we keep standing. And, Bellatrix adds, grin wicked and proud. We call friends. Rita writes a line that will make enemies grind teeth and allies breathe better. She leaves without additional adjectives. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The hinge door breathes down corridor, a gentle tide. The warding powder along the seam glows and rests. The ledger in the room beyond, where choices defer themselves with dignity, lies open to a page that says not yet with a flourish that refuses to be cute. Aquila dusts the seam again, a devotion. Kestrel notes 0 anomalies in a handwriting that will shame future carelessness. Maris stations a chair in the corridor because rest is a tactic. Narcissa appears with a tray and a note. The tray holds sandwiches that taste like childhood that did not apologize for surviving. The note reads, "Pride is still for dessert." Lucius's postscript adds, "Unless you or me." Bellatrix snorts. Harry grins. They sit in the corridor and eat like a family who refuses to pretend politics is separate from bread. A clerk walking by sees the sandwiches and remembers to eat and does not cry about it and therefore counts as progress. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Night drops into the townhouse like a velvet ledger. The framed oaths glow faint in lamplight. The inkstone rests, sated. The loyalty dial sits on the table, star sliver. Centered between law and spouse like a coin refusing to choose a pocket. The ring hums. The star cools. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Inventory, Harry says. Debts forward. Debt to Sirius, Bellatrix says, voice unflinching. I cannot pay him. I will pay the world. Debt to children, Harry says. To protect their names from markets and poems. They do not lift the knife. Fidelity, Bellatrix says. Spouse first tonight. Law first tomorrow, Harry answers. He places a finger on the loyalty dial and slides the star sliver toward spouse by a hair. She watches, pleased. He removes his hand. She slides it back to center. They both smile. Fear audit, he says. What frightens us now? Becoming a brand, she says without blinking. Being useful to power that does not deserve us. Confusing conciliation with cowardice, he answers. Letting mercy die of embarrassment. They give the room those two and it purrs like a cat that has learned to respect knives. Resolve, Bellatrix says. We will embarrass evil, not ourselves. Resolve, Harry replies. We will be boring when boring is brave. They rise. The knife glints, unused and fed. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The watch circle rotates like planets confident in their orbits. Aquila files a report that reads like prose and rules like math. Kestrel sleeps with the contentment of a net that loves catching only what asks to be dangerous. Maris writes a list titled Things That Help and pins it to a corkboard in the clinic and 3 people follow it and none of them die of panic that night. Hermione goes home and writes 2 pages of law that eat a loophole and burp politely. Ron pays a tab and tells a joke and a barman learns to respect ethics disguised as humor. Kingsley writes a speech that will be remembered because it said less than it meant and meant more than it said. The auditor sends a ledger with a note. We cancelled 3 instruments that mispriced fear. A gray figure delivers a notice. I volunteer at clinics now. A coin in a jar dreams of silence and wakes to find the dream still present. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Morning returns, because it is stubborn and loves a sequel. The loyalty dial gleams. The hinge door breathes. The framed oaths keep their knives sharp. The city stretches, learning which aches are growth and which are warning. Bellatrix stands at the window with her reflection behaving itself. We are becoming tedious to bait, she says, pleased. Harry joins her, star quiet, ring warm. And obvious to witnesses, he answers. They stand there, 2 silhouettes that learn to be laws without forgetting they are people first. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Mini Cliff. In the vault beneath House Black, the ledger of choices deferred inks a small, ruthless sentence in a hand neither of them owns. I will not be optimized. On the hinge door's seam, the warding powder flares once like a camera catching a thief and then rests. In a committee room that did not schedule mischief, a draft titled Redefine Safety as Consent opens itself and refuses to close. On a far roof, a dragonbone spyglass points at a house and then turns away as if embarrassed by its own appetite. Ellipsis. 10. The Child's Choice. Dawn lays a thin ribbon of light across London and does not tell it what to do with the day. The Covenant hums steady along brick and beam, tuned to breath more than noise. Headlines have learned shorter sentences and better manners. Custody. Candor. Constraint. Harry fastens his cuffs with the care of a habit that respects ritual as discipline. The ring is warm, companionable. The star at his sternum rests, a compass pointing to choices rather than orders. Bellatrix leans in the doorway, ink dark silk a decision, crescent at her throat an honest receipt. Her smile sounds like steel deciding to be kind without asking for applause. Today, she says. We meet the unnamed line. Today, he answers. We sponsor a choice. Hermione enters with a folio that smells like law-taught grace. Ron with coffee and a grin that files dread down to size. Aquila, Kestrel, and Maris arrive on quiet feet that carry authority. The hinge door brightened twice before sunrise, Hermione says. No breach. An invitation. Consent. Aquila writes, steady. Witness parameters hold, Kestrel adds. We can see without stealing. Maris lays out salve, sugar, and a bell charm that turns agony into boredom. If any magic strains, we answer with rest first. Bellatrix lifts the verity splitter, opal warm, crescent honest. Let us be interesting and responsible at the same time. Harry nods. We go slow and public. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. The corridor to the hinge door holds its breath with good manners. Warding powder along the seam glows, rests, glows again like a heartbeat. The loyalty dial sits in Harry's palm, star sliver centered between law and spouse. Bellatrix places her finger beside his. They slide the light a hair toward law. They remove their hands. The light slides back to center as if deciding the day requires a duet. Ownership, Harry says, calm. Consent, Bellatrix says, bright. The hinge nods in wood. The door opens inward onto a room that exists because a city agreed to store a question. A table, a chair, a window into no current street and every possible one. On the table, the ledger of choices deferred lies open to a page that recognizes their footprints. Candor bright. Constraint steady. The third line inked in a hand that belongs to nobody present. I will not be optimized. The words hang with a gravity that loves those who can hold their own weight. Harry does not step forward. Bellatrix does not speak. They stand in the doorway and let the room decide if it wishes to be watched. Minutes pass. The market cannot sell them. The page ripples once. Ink writes, if you name me, I will leave. Bellatrix laughs softly, delighted by refusal that tastes like a spine. Excellent taste. Harry's mouth tilts, proud. We will host, not own. They step to either side of the door, leaving the threshold clear. Aquila writes one sentence, witness, do not harvest. Kestrel tilts the veil to show only context. Maris sets the bell charm on the table and steps back. Hermione lowers her quill and lets attention become the instrument. Ron breathes a joke and keeps it for later because timing is an ethics. The air shimmers above the ledger. Not a body, a presence, younger than a name, older than a guess. Hello. Bellatrix inclines her head as if greeting a sovereign. Welcome. Harry nods, steady. The room is yours. Words appear without hands. Terms. Consent, Harry answers. Truth with kindness, Bellatrix adds. Freedom to refuse, Hermione says. Safety without cages, Maris says. Witness without theft, Aquila says. Net that never hunts, Kestrel says. The ink rests. Then writes. Accepted. Opening parenthesis. Closing parenthesis. Outside the room, London practices a new habit called listening. The ministry opens a public channel without spectacle. Kingsley speaks softly and the city hears him because he has made a practice of being worth hearing. A choice is approaching, he says. It does not owe us entertainment. We will practice patience. In underwriting, the auditor closes two models with quiet satisfaction. A note travels to the mirror room like a respectful knock. We will not price this. At Gringotts, a goblin writes a line into a book with ancient sarcasm and modern sincerity. Unbid. Rita Skeeter files a story with no adjectives in its headline and feels a thrill that is not vanity. In a pub off Diagon, a barman wipes a counter twice and tells a patron to keep his voice down because some moments don't want narration. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. The ledger writes again. Ask. Harry glances at Bellatrix and the loyalty dial star holds center. He breathes. What would make refusal easier to keep? A. That tastes like thinking. Your silence. Your laughter when I am boring. Your rage when I am priced. Bellatrix's eyes soften without dulling. We can do all three. What will you choose to be called? Hermione asks, careful. Ink hesitates. Then writes. I will choose later. I like later. Aquila writes. Later is a right. Kestrel hums assent in a key that teaches reflections to mind themselves. Maris smiles a midwife's smile at a sentence that knows its own pulse. Ron exhales a joke he will save until laughter won't bruise. Would you like sponsors? Harry asks. The ink answers at once. Yes. Sponsor candor. Sponsor constraint. Leave custody to me. Bellatrix laughs in delight. Perverse and perfect. Hermione's quill moves, respectful. We can file sponsorship that does not bind. File nothing. The words shine darker as if written with iron. Do not flatter law with my name. Harry nods, grateful to be told no by a future that knows what it wants. Then we will file our own promises, not yours. Bellatrix touches the verity splitter and the crescent warms. And we will keep receipts. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. The ledger writes a question that tastes like mischief taught ethics. What happens if I choose lash? Silence lands and stays. Not fear. Respect. Harry answers without ritual. We stand between lash and law until choice ripens. Bellatrix follows with a blade that purrs. We teach lash to love consent or die of embarrassment. The ink, S. Then writes. If I choose law, then we teach law to purr, Bellatrix says, amused. And to bite only what volunteers to be dangerous, Harry adds. The ink rests. Then writes, smaller. If I choose neither. Aquila's pen moves once. Right reserved. We will defend abstention, Hermione says. Kestrel makes a sigil in air that files itself under unpriced. Maris touches the bell charm and the room breathes easier. Ron releases a soft mutter that sounds like a pub promising soup to anyone who needs it. The ink writes, quick. Do not make me a holiday. Do not make me a warning. Do not make me a brand. Bellatrix's smile becomes a cathedral agreeing to host a scandal because the music will be worth it. We will make you a person. Harry's voice is a steady river. We will make room. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Down the hall of lots wakes as if it sensed someone worth weighing later and decided to tidy. The sigils under the arch glow in their honest places. Intent, consequence, equity, consent, lineage, debt, restitution. Above them, a blank stone sits like a chair kept open at table for a guest who will decide whether to sit. In underwriting, the auditor writes a rule into a model and then deletes it because rules that presume names have earned mockery. In the mirror room, the cracked coin lies quiet, practicing not intruding. In a clinic, Maris's list titled Things That Help gains a new line in neat hand. Ask later. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. The ledger writes a sentence that sounds like a grin. Bring me music. Bring me quiet. Bring me a question that isn't a trap. Harry looks at Bellatrix and does not need between to speak for him. We can manage too. The third we will learn. Bellatrix inclines, conspiratorial. We have friends who ask rude questions without traps. Hermione raises a hand. We will fail in public. We will repair in public. Aquila writes, receipts. Kestrel's veil warms in a ribbon that means this is how nets become instruments. Maris breathes like a spell for steady hands. Ron whispers a line he will use later, be boring bravely. The ink writes, almost playful. Make me a door that opens from my side. Harry chuckles. We can do locks. Bellatrix's eyes glitter. We can do keys that refuse theft. The loyalty dial glows softly. The star remains centered. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Kingsley appears at the threshold and does not cross it. Do you require anything from the room that governs the rooms? He asks, mild. The ink writes. Keep the doors unlocked. Keep the wolves hungry and polite. Keep the poets broke enough to be honest. Kingsley smiles despite himself. Done. A goblin knocks on the jamb with courteous claws and leaves a note. we will enforce abstention as treasure. The auditor sends a second note, we have shut down 2 more instruments that monetized refusal. Rita texts a single word to a public channel and deletes it before sending because some reports ask to be quiet. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The ledger's ink dims as if catching a breath. Then writes, Stark. No oaths on my name. No votive shelves. No waiting rooms that say destiny. If I become, I become. If I do not build museums. Bellatrix's laughter is feral and disciplined. We will build clinics instead. Harry nods. In schools that teach refusals as well as requests. Hermione's quill moves. Policy learns to kneel to consent. Aquila writes, abstention is civic right. Kestrel files a glyph with the Hall of Lots that tells the stone to mind its manners. Maris adds a page to things that help. Soup, sleep, silence, jokes that don't bite the wrong ankles. Ron draws a rude doodle in the margin that will later become a logo for a charity by accident. The ink rests. Then writes, very small. Thank you. Leave now. Keep the door powdered. They bow without theater. They step back. The hinge closes itself as gently as a hand placing a sleeping child into a bed it consented to. The powder glows, rests. The corridor exhales. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The plenary address that follows is shorter than rumor and stronger. Kingsley says 4 sentences and stops. Consent is prime. Abstention is unpriced. Joy keeps teeth. Mercy keeps courage. The room stands and does not clap at first because clapping is sometimes the enemy of listening. Then it claps anyway because bodies need something to do with victory that refuses gloating. Hermione files a 2-page amendment that redefines safety as consent and the document does not try to wriggle out of its own meaning. Aquila publishes a report titled Oversight is Companionship and 3 Departments steal it legally. Kestrel releases a technical note that teaches mirrors to apologize. Maris opens 2 more clinics and closes a rumor. Ron hosts a small, loud fundraiser that buys soup and dignity. The auditor posts an open ledger. A goblin hangs a plaque that reads unbid above a vault shelf. Rita prints a column with 5 adjectives in the entire piece and none are lies. Narcissa arrives at twilight with a cake that tastes like surviving with standards. Lucius declines to take credit for the recipe and lies beautifully. House Black recognizes abstention as couture, Narcissa says. We approve. Bellatrix kisses her cheek like a vow that knows its own limits and loves them. Harry offers Lucius a slice and receives a smirk that translates to reluctant respect. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. Night drapes itself over the townhouse and does not ask to be dramatic. The framed oaths glow faint. The inkstone rests like a satisfied predator. The loyalty dial sits centered. The ring hums. The star cools. Between opens. Chairs. Table. Knife. They sit. Hands near the blade. Distance chosen. Candor, Harry says. I was afraid to be a sponsor. It felt like a theft. Candor, Bellatrix answers. I was tempted to name the unnamed because naming is a power I used like a knife. I did not. They do not lift the knife. Constraint, Harry says. We will not sell minutes. Constraint, Bellatrix replies. We will not invent holidays for a person who asked for quiet. Custody, he says, soft. If issue never becomes, we will adopt nothing but good habits. Her smile is a promise without theater. And bad jokes, she adds, eyes at his. He almost laughs. He chooses to. The room takes it like a tithe. Fear audit, he says. What frightens us now? Becoming museums, she says. Becoming martyrs, he answers. They let the room have both. It purrs with approval that refuses to flatter. Resolve, Bellatrix says. We will be citizens. Resolve, Harry replies. We will be family. They rise. The knife glints, unused, fed. Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis. The watch circle rotates. Reports file themselves. Clinics hum. Mirrors mind themselves. Coins practice silence. Underwriting posts an erratum titled Pride is a cost center. Goblins smirk. Rita sleeps. Kingsley writes nothing and means everything. On the hinge doors seam, the powder brightens once like a blink. In the vault, the ledger of choices deferred turns a page and does not write. In a pub off Diagon, someone buys soup without asking for a story and receives it with bread and no receipt. A clerk stops checking the lock twice. A child spells constraint on a windowsill and laughs because the letters look like stairs. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Mini Cliff. At dawn's edge, before newspapers commit to paper, the hinge door opens a finger's width and closes as if practicing punctuation. On the table inside, the ledger shows 3 lines steady as breath. Candor bright. Constraint calm. The third line blank and sovereign. On a distant roof, a dragonbone spyglass gathers dust while wildflowers insurgent through cracks dare the city to practice joy with teeth. Ellipsis. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more magical what-ifs.